Chapter 11. Kargath Academy. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Bai Yuntian held Jian Chen's head in a loving way as she slowly walked forward. Third sister, this was only some playful sparring between kids, not something we should worry about. It's pointless to get angry, in the end, the two of them are just children after all. Right now, we should instead concentrate on healing Kuer's wounds. At the words of Bai Yuntian, despite still being quite mad, all Yu Feng Han could do was fume silently. She was afraid that if she continued to nag everyone about the acts of such small children, her three sisters would begin to see her in a darker light. Bai Yuntian walked up to where Changyang Ku reclined, closed her eyes and brought her two hands over the boy's wounds. Her hands hovered there for a moment before letting off a faint white glow. At that moment, Jian Chen's eyes sparkled with interest. He could clearly sense that a special power was gradually gathering in his mother's hands, forming that faint white glow. Moreover, this type of special power was the exact same power that he was able to contain inside the ball he had made earlier. Jian Chen began to pay close attention to his mother's movements, and in doing so he suddenly realized that he was actually unsure if he was able to understand the very same method his mother was using to manipulate the energy. After all, he had discovered ages ago that this ability to integrate the strength of the world was complicated. The white glow in Bai Yuntian's hands grew stronger and stronger, yet the light never hurt one's eyes. After a few deep breaths, she flicked her arms and the milky white light left her hands and floated down to Changyang Ku's stomach, slowly merging with the wound there. The white bandages that were already there obstructed Jian Chen's view of what exactly the white ball of energy was doing, and what changes were occurring. After completing her task, Bai Yuntian let out a deep breath. Third sister, Changyang Ku is fine, his injuries should be non-existent now. A happy smile finally appeared on Yu Feng Han's face. She thanked Bai Yuntian briefly before quickly stepping over to Changyang Ku's bedside. She gave a concerned look towards her son and asked, "Kuer, how are you feeling? Does your wound still hurt?" Changyang Ku raised his hand to rub at his stomach area, and laughed before starting to tear at his bandages. "Mother, your son is all right now. It's very comfortable." After the bandages fell off, it was clear that the wound on Changyang Ku's stomach was nowhere to be seen. Only a small bloody scar remained, but other than that, the wound had ceased to exist. Upon seeing this, Jian Chen suddenly understood. This type of mysterious energy was the unique energy that belonged to radiant saints. Their energy had a special healing effect that could heal any injury, no matter how grave. Under the care of a radiant saint, any wound would be healed rapidly. Since his own mother was a radiant saint, she was able to use this healing power. Legend said that some very strong radiant saints were able to regrow someone's arm, as well as having the power to resurrect the dead. Inside Jian Chen's head, he had a secret thought. If he was able to understand and absorb the energy of the radiant saint, then he may be able to be like his mother, and have the same amount of control a radiant saint had to heal wounds. As he had this thought, Jian Chen couldn't help but feel impatient, and wanted to test it out. However, in the end he still endured the temptation, since his current situation was not appropriate for experimenting. At that moment, the doors to the room opened wide. Jian Chen glanced at the people who walked in together. It was his father, Changyang Ba, and the Changyang clan's housekeeper, Chang Bai. "How is Kuer? His injuries are not that severe, are they?" Changyang Ba asked with a voice of concern. "I thank my lord for his concern, but fourth sister has already healed him, so Kuer is fine now." Yu Feng Han's face showed a hint of a smile. Changyang Ba was showing some concern for his son, so she felt happy. "Then everything is fine now." Changyang Ba nodded his head and looked at Jian Chen. "Xianger, how have these past few days been treating you?" Even when talking to Jian Chen, some concern was being shown as well. "I thank father for his concerns, your son has been doing very well." Jian Chen's voice was very even. Ever since the end of the Saint test, this was the first time Changyang Ba and Jian Chen had talked to each other. Hearing Jian Chen's voice sound so clipped with a sense of detachment, Changyang Ba couldn't help but sigh to himself secretly. Xiang'er, come accompany your father to the study room. Changyang Ba then turned around to exit from the room. In a flash, Jian Chen followed Changyang Ba and Changbai into the study room. Sitting down on a chair, Changyang Ba stared at Jian Chen for a moment, before asking him, Xiang'er, I have heard that earlier this morning, you injured Qiu Er of the kitchen servants this morning. That is true. Jian Chen had already realized that his true strength had already been revealed, so there was no point in trying to hide it. Changyang Ba's eyes had a cheerful expression as he laughed and said gently, Xiang'er, why don't you tell your father, can you already cultivate Saint Force? Jian Chen nodded his head faintly and answered as neutrally as before, yes. He knew that there was no way he could conceal this fact, so he admitted it with straightforward answer. Although he already could guess that Jian Chen could cultivate Saint Force, hearing the confirmation from Jian Chen's own mouth made Changyang Ba feel even more emotional. Changbai, may I trouble you to test Xiang'er's Saint Force again? Changyang Ba was happy now, but he still spoke to Changbai politely, not at all having an attitude of the clan master asking for a housekeeper to do something. But Changbai only laughed, and brought the hand with his space ring up, causing the saint stone to once more appear right in front of Jian Chen's eyes. Fourth master, please put your hand on top of the stone. He said in a warm tone. The moment Jian Chen put his hand on the saint stone, Changbai also activated it. In that instant, Jian Chen once again felt that mysterious power being emitted from the saint stone, entering his body through his arms. Within him, the power roamed around in a circle, before finally returning back to the saint stone. At the same time, the only thing that could be seen was the entire saint stone suddenly emitting a faint red glow. Seeing the saint stone glow red, Changyang Ba's face showed an excited expression. Even Changbai now had a faint smile, and he looked at Jian Chen with a gratified look in his eyes. Clan leader, based on the strength of the glow, fourth master has already reached the fourth Saint Force layer. Changbai said with a faint smile. The fourth layer. The fourth layer. Changyang Ba gradually stood up from his chair, and in excitement, he wrung his hands together. Before this, he had already guessed such a result, but it had only been a guess. Now that he knew the actual situation, he felt a new feeling in his heart. Jian Chen had already reached the fourth Saint Force layer at the age of 7. Perhaps this level was not very outstanding compared to the entire Tian Yuan continent, but within Jessan Kingdom, this was enough to qualify as a first-class genius. Moreover, his third brother, Changyang Ku, was 3 years older than Jian Chen, and yet his inner Saint Force power had just reached the fourth layer. Changbai once again placed the Saint Stone within his space ring. With a gratified look, he smiled, Fourth Master, you really have not disappointed me. Changyang Ba quickly calmed down, and glanced at Jian Chen in a completely transformed light. His eyes were now filled with surprise, excitement, and gratitude. By the time Jian Chen left the study room, it was already almost noon. Right after Jian Chen left, Changyang Ba looked at Changbai, and with a slightly doubtful tone he said, Changbai, since Xiang'er has Saint Force, then how come last time he was tested, it wasn't detected? It had even scared me into thinking that Xiang'er was a cripple that was not able to cultivate Saint Force. Changbai furrowed his brows, and after pondering for a bit, slowly said, I'm not completely sure either. Perhaps the last Saint test malfunctioned somehow. However, this is no longer of any importance. Changyang Ba nodded. Currently, Xiang'er is only around 7 years old, and he has already reached the 4th Saint Force level. If this continues, I predict that the latest that Xiang'er will break through the 10th Saint Force level is by the age of 18 and condense his Saint Force into a Saint weapon. Moreover, Xiang'er has always been an outstanding genius since he was young, so I want to quickly send him to Kargath Academy to study. What does Changbai think? Hearing these words, Changbai pondered for a bit, then replied, Kargath Academy is the most famous academy in our Jessan Kingdom. However, the threshold to enter the academy is high. The person's strength must have reached the 8th Saint Force level, and his or her age cannot be over 18. If clan leader wants to quickly send 4th Master to Kargath Academy, I'm afraid that is impossible in such a short period of time. Although the 4th Master has already reached the 4th Saint Force level, the distance to the 8th Saint Force level will most likely take quite a long time. After all, the higher the Saint Force level, the harder it is to raise. I hope that Xiang'er can quickly train to the 8th Saint Force level within the next few years. Changyang Ba said softly. Changbai smiled, "Don't worry, clan leader. I believe that 4th Master will reach the 8th Saint Force layer sooner or later. The only issue is time, since just now, when I assessed 4th Master, I discovered that 4th Master's Saint Force wasn't far from reaching the 5th layer." Hearing these words, Changyang Ba was unable to contain his joy, as he mumbled, "I hope that Xiang'er will really surpass Changbai in the future, and become the clan's pillar of support." Changbai stood on the side, smiling wordlessly. However, his eyes did not at all hide his expression of anticipation. After leaving the study room, Jian Chen immediately ran quickly back to his own room. He tightly closed his door, and he recalled the entire frightening scene of his fight with Changyang Ku. Although Jian Chen knew that during his fight with Dugu Qiubai in his previous world, he had made a breakthrough and entered the realm of the Sword God, but he didn't dare think that after his reincarnation he would still be able to accomplish it. Just thinking about that remarkable ability sent Jian Chen into a spiral of joy and excitement. But when Jian Chen thought back to when the tree branch had mysteriously emitted sword qi, he started to feel some doubt. He no longer had the same strength he had from the previous world, so how was it possible for him to control an ordinary tree branch with the same sword qi? As he contemplated this, Jian Chen decided to give it a try once more. Scanning the room, his eyes noticed a nearby wooden clothes rack. Snapping off a 2-foot wooden strip, Jian Chen would use it as a makeshift sword. Holding the 2-foot wooden strip, Jian Chen slowly entered a state of tranquility. Deep in his mind, Jian Chen slowly began to convince himself that the wooden strip in his hand was not a wooden strip, but a sword instead. A sword for a god that could overcome anything. Slowly as he harmonized with it, he could feel the grains in his hands, and see them very clearly within his own head so well, he could even understand their internal compositions. Sucking a deep breath, he tried to quell the feelings of emotions within his heart. Taking hold of his emotions, the item in his hand flew into the air. Right as Jian Chen's mind had reached this state, he had already established a connection between the wooden strip and his spirit. As the wooden strip separated from his hand, it floated by itself in midair while still being under Jian Chen's control. It slowly inched forward before emitting a white ray of light, revealing the sharp sword qi he was familiar with. At this moment, Jian Chen had realized his soul had completely harmonized with the wooden strip, to the point that it had felt like his own arm that could easily be controlled with his will. At the same time, he had realized that the sword qi in the wooden strip had something to do with his soul. With that realization, Jian Chen could only see a bright ray of light coming from the hovering wooden strip and flew around his body with a speed so fast, even Jian Chen couldn't see it clearly. Jian Chen's heart pulsed quickly as his face revealed a look of extreme joy. He had not thought that the final moment of his life in the previous world would he be able to understand the sword's soul. From that day on, the remarkable ability of the sword's soul was not only Jian Chen's strongest attack, but also a skill that could save his life. Unknowingly, a few years passed. The current Jian Chen was already 15 years old. During these past few years, Jian Chen had rarely gone outside, and spent every day in his room training the Azulite sword law. His strength had already been revealed, and he had even been recognized as a cultivating genius. Thus, his position in the Changyang household had changed, there was no longer a single person in the household that dared to look down on him. Moreover, Changyang Ba had been extremely caring to Jian Chen in pretty much every possible way. Among this, the happiest one was Bai Yuntian. Originally, her son that was deemed as a cripple unable to cultivate, but now he had transformed into a cultivating genius, especially since he had reached the 4th Saint Force layer at the age of 7. Anyone could imagine how happy Bai Yuntian was about her son being extraordinary. However, Jian Chen discovered that since he had revealed his true strength, his eldest aunt Ling Long and third aunt Yufeng Han seemed to always look at him with an unfriendly expression. This situation was one that the Jian Chen with memories of his previous life was well aware of. Within the past few years, Jian Chen had already reached the 8th Saint Force layer. Moreover, this was only because Jian Chen had purposely slowed down his pace. That was because during the past few years, Jian Chen had used almost half the time to familiarize himself with the sword laws from his previous world. Otherwise, he most likely would have broken through the 8th level ages ago. Because of this, Jian Chen was currently not far from reaching the 9th layer already. Right now, within the Changyang household, Jian Chen's strength had already well surpassed his second sister Changyang Mingyue, and his third brother Changyang Ku. Although Changyang Mingyue was over 3 years older than Jian Chen, her Saint Force had stopped at the 7th layer. As for Changyang Ku, he had never really had any talent for cultivating, and his current 17-year-old self had only achieved the 5th Saint Force layer after much difficulty. In the early morning, a large group of people gathered outside the Great Hall. Amongst this group were Jian Chen's parents, his 3 aunts, and even his third brother, Changyang Ku, and his second sister, Changyang Mingyue. Aside from them, a few of Changyang household's chief figures were also present. There was also a bird-type magical beast about 3 meters large that calmly sat on the ground, not too far from the crowd of people. Today was the day that Jian Chen would leave for Kargath Academy to study. The minimum standard to enter Kargath Academy was having achieved the 8th level. In addition, the person's age could not be over 18. Currently, Jian Chen met both of these standards. Moreover, today happened to also be the enrolling General Assembly for Kargath Academy that only occurred once a year. Bai Yuntian's face was covered in tears as she looked at Jian Chen. With a loving gaze, she said, "Xiang'er, you have to study diligently at the academy. Try to stay out of trouble, understand?" Bai Yuntian spoke with a tone filled with deep concern. Jian Chen obediently nodded, and said, "Don't worry, mother, I know what I should do." Changyang Ba walked up to Jian Chen, and said, "Xiang'er, this space belt is something father prepared especially for you. Although it isn't anything priceless, and the amount of space inside isn't very large, it can still store some small things. If you break through the 10th level by the time you turn 18 and condense your Saint Force into a Saint Weapon, then father will reward you with a space ring and a monster core." While speaking, a very exquisite belt had already appeared in his hands. Seeing the size of the belt, it was obvious that it had been specifically tailored for Jian Chen. Seeing Changyang Ba be so concerned about Jian Chen, Ling Long and Fenyan, who were standing nearby, couldn't help but show a trace of deep jealousy and dissatisfaction. However, currently, everyone's gazes were gathered on Jian Chen, and nobody had noticed them. Jian Chen accepted the belt and said with a strong self-confidence, "Father, I will definitely become a saint soon." Changyang Ba expressed a trace of a smile, and he looked at Jian Chen with a gaze full of gratification. "Fourth Master, it's getting late. We should go on our way." At that moment, the housekeeper Changbai that was standing on the side, spoke up. Jian Chen gave one final glance at his mother, and then walked over to Changbai without once turning his back, and said, "Changbai, let's leave." Changbai reached out and lifted Jian Chen onto the back of the flying magical beast. Afterwards, he jumped on as well, sitting next to Jian Chen. Faintly smiling at Jian Chen, he said, "Fourth Master, sit tight please." Afterwards, he only saw Changbai pat the magical beast's back. In an instant, the flying magical beast seemed to have received a command, and stretched out its 10-meter-long wings to fly up. It directly rose up into the air, and began to quickly fly off into the distance. Chapter 12. Big Brother Changyang, who you are listening at novelfull.audio. Sitting on top of the flying magical beast, Jian Chen's face did not reveal any sort of emotion, even though they were flying at an extreme speed 1,000 feet high up into the air. Since the beast was flying at such high speeds, he could hear a ceaseless rumbling sound from the wind in his ears. Looking at Jian Chen's passive face, Chang Bai couldn't help but nod in approval. Most children generally paled in extreme fear after flying on top of a magical beast for the first time. Some children trembled in fear the whole time, while a smaller amount even wet themselves, but very few people had achieved the same tranquility as Jian Chen. Chang Bai thought back to when he had sent Chang Yang-hu to Kargath Academy a few years back. After sitting on the flying beast, Chang Yang-hu's entire body had shivered from fright as he grabbed hold of the feathers on the beast's neck. The fourth master does not seem to be like the others. It truly makes one wonder what sort of accomplishments he will succeed in the future. Chang Bai thought to himself. Jian Chen stared at the flying magical beast below him and asked, Chang Bai, what kind of beast is this, to be flying at such a fast speed? This is only natural. Chang Bai spoke in a majestic voice, Fourth Master, you shouldn't underestimate this magical beast. This magical beast is called the Eagle Beast. It is a Class 4 magical beast which is the equivalent of a great Saint Master. It can fly through the sky at extremely fast speeds, and even though it is barely Class 4, even someone of the same rank of Earth Saint Master would not be able to fight it when it is in the sky. Then that would mean this Eagle Beast is very expensive. Jian Chen said. Chang Bai nodded, that is natural as well. Flying magical beasts are very expensive, not only because they are hard to capture, but hard to tame as well. Even though flying magical beasts are the fastest way of transportation, riding on one is very dangerous. In the case that a magical beast goes out of control, then the rider will be sent falling from thousands of meters in the air. Even with the power of an Earth Saint Master, surviving a fall like that would be unlikely, and even if you're lucky, you will still end up with a fatal injury. Even if it's a Class 1 or 2 flying magical beast, its price is still very expensive, especially if it has a berserk nature or won't submit to a human. Therefore, taming a flying magical beast is a very challenging task to accomplish. Jian Chen nodded his head before slowly becoming silent once more. Chang Bai looked at the silent Jian Chen and said, Fourth Master, your older brother Chang Yang-hu is also at Kargath Academy. It has been a few years already, so becoming a saint isn't too far away for him. If you ever come across a problem at the academy, don't be afraid to ask your older brother to help solve it. Yes, I know. Jian Chen replied. But his mind felt complicated when he thought of his mysterious older brother. Jian Chen had never seen him before, and he didn't even know what his brother's personality was like. He was also very worried about if his older brother would be jealous about his innate skill at cultivating Saint Force, like third brother Chang Yang-hu was. Being jealous over something like this was not at all uncommon within a big clan. In the previous world, Jian Chen had met all sorts of family strife due to a power struggle between siblings during his time as a traveler. In Jian Chen's heart, he desperately hoped that such a situation would not happen to him. In his previous world, he was an orphan who had never experienced any sort of familial love. Since the heavens had blessed him with a family this time, he treasured it deeply. After the Eagle Beast flew for half the day at an extremely high speed, it finally arrived at Kargath Academy, where under Chang Bai's control, it descended to a mere 100 meters above ground. Kargath Academy was established within the plains, with a great wall 10 meters high surrounding it. The academy was extraordinarily big, and the lands it covered were vast as well. Even though Jian Chen was hovering 100 meters above ground, he still couldn't see the entire academy. Kargath Academy was the most prestigious academy in the Jessen Kingdom, and today was its annual opening ceremony. For that reason, the front gates were extremely lively. There were many people there, as well as a few luxurious carriages that were parked not too far away. However, Jian Chen couldn't put names to the types of magical beasts that were pulling the carriages. Virtually every carriage had a few guards protecting them. In the skies, a few flying magical beasts approached them, descending down onto the academy courtyards. Each of them carried a small child. Chang Bai instructed the eagle beast to fly down towards the courtyards as well, landing them right next to a 100-meter tall tower. He brought Jian Chen directly into the tower. Outside, there were still quite a few flying magical beasts resting there. Jian Chen and Chang Bai walked to the top of the tower to meet the headmaster of Kargath Academy. The headmaster was not that much different in age than Chang Bai, and Jian Chen had a feeling that the two had some sort of familiarity between them. Because of this familiarity, Jian Chen could easily enter the academy without any problems. Under the instructions of the headmaster, Jian Chen's brother Changyang, who had been called up to the top of the tower as well, allowing him to see the mysterious older brother he had never met before. Changyang, who was already 18 years old, the same age as his second sister Changyang Mingyue, but Changyang Mingyue was younger by 3 months. Changyang, who was a fairly sturdy teenager who was taller than Jian Chen, and he wore the academy uniform. He had already been enrolled in the academy for over 2 years, and his Saint Force had also reached the peak of the 10th layer. However, he had not yet condensed it into a saint weapon. The distance between the peak of the 10th layer and sainthood was not big at all, but the moment in between was very important, as condensing the Saint Force into a saint weapon was a very challenging task. On the Tian Yuan continent, many people weren't capable of forming a saint weapon since birth, because they lacked the aptitude, as well as the innate skill. According to the headmaster, Changyang, who had already reached the peak of the 10th layer a year ago and had already tried to form a saint weapon 3 times, but only met with failure each time. However, seeing an 18-year-old that could form a saint weapon by the age of 18 was rare to see on the Tian Yuan continent. The average age was around 20 years before a saint weapon could be formed, but most of them were geniuses. Of course, the average person could make a saint weapon at that age as well, but most of them would not be able to walk down the path of martial arts for long. Because the spiritual qi of the Tian Yuan continent was abundant, the average lifespan of a person was around 200 years. For a person to form a saint weapon at the age of 20, that could be considered decent. Chang Bai pointed at Changyang Hu and said to Jian Chen, "Fourth master, that person is your brother Changyang Hu." Looking over at him, he cried, "Eldest master, this is your younger brother Changyang Xiang Tian." Big brother. Jian Chen looked at Changyang Hu with a smile as he shouted out a greeting. In his eyes, he had felt that Changyang Hu looked to be a strong yet straightforward person, but his heart was not in complete agreement. Hearing Jian Chen's shout, Changyang Hu scratched at his cheek with a laugh, "Fourth brother, feel free to call on me anytime. If you are bullied in the future, then look for me straight away, and I'll smash them to pieces." Laughing at his brother's speech, Jian Chen responded, "Then I'll be relying on you, big brother." With this first impression, Jian Chen had thought that Changyang Hu was pretty nice, and so all worries he had about his big brother began to disappear like smoke. Changyang Hu shook his head and laughed once more, "It'll be no problem, not a problem at all. No matter what you say, I am still your older brother, so protecting the fourth brother is an absolute must." After this, Changyang Hu suddenly froze before looking around, his eyes revealing some doubts. "Chang Bai, where are second sister and third brother?" he asked. "Eldest master, the second lady and third master have not yet reached the requirements to enter the academy, so it is only the fourth master that was able to join." Chang Bai answered serenely. "Oh." Hearing that, Changyang Hu let loose a disappointed look and began to mutter, "How did they not reach the requirement of reaching the 8th layer? This is silly. Fourth brother is more formidable, since he reached the 8th layer so quickly. He's even more amazing than me, his older brother. Eldest master, please escort the fourth master down. From today on, you need to properly look after your younger brother. I still have some business to settle with the headmaster." Chang Bai said. Changyang Hu nodded his head firmly and pounded his chest with his fist, "Chang Bai, don't worry. I definitely won't allow anyone in the school to bully fourth brother. Afterwards, Jian Chen received the school medal and left with his older brother. After exiting the tower, Jian Chen looked at the school medal in his hands. Aside from it being proof of him being a student, it also contained his dorm address. Although Jian Chen was not familiar with the layout of the academy, but because Chang Yang-hu was there to lead the way, they both ended up at their destination sooner than he had expected. The dormitories of the academy were built using a very durable type of stone and were split into two different areas. One area was for the commoners to live in, and the other side was for people like Jian Chen, who had a prestigious clan backing them up. The differences between the two were like comparing the heavens to the earth. Kargath Academy was Jessan Kingdom's most prestigious academy, so it naturally had to have a unique characteristic. Kargath Academy had a very strict rule: one must reach the 8th layer of Saint Force before they reach the age of 18 in order to fulfill the requirement. If a student does not reach this level, then even if they are from an extremely prestigious and rich family, they will not be able to enroll in the academy. Because the tuition costs were very low, even the commoners were able to enroll with ease. Some of the students that successfully enrolled came from impoverished families, but Kargath Academy had even waived the fee for many. For that reason, many students were of a commoner's background, and had a poor innate skill for cultivation. At Kargath Academy, there was also another iron-set rule that an aristocrat's follower could not casually bully commoner students. Otherwise, no matter how powerful your family background was, you would still suffer from a serious punishment. If the situation was serious enough, then you might even be expelled. Although this would offend some major families, Kargath Academies had the backing of the Jessan Kingdom. Moreover, the headmaster was one of the 6 major elites in Jessan Empire, so no major family dared to speak up against this iron-set rule. Jian Chen's dorm room was around 10 square meters, and the room's decor was extremely simple. Aside from a bed and a chair, there wasn't anything else present. However, the entire room had been tidied so that it was extremely clean and organized, and it was completely spotless. Fourth brother, this is your room, remember the location well, and be careful to not go the wrong way. Chang Yang-hu laughed. Jian Chen nodded, and after throwing down some of the clothes he had brought with him, he was pulled away by his older brother to wander around the school grounds. Chang Yang-hu claimed that it was so that Jian Chen could familiarize himself with his new surroundings. For the entire afternoon, Jian Chen was dragged around by Chang Yang-hu to wander aimlessly around the school. Suddenly, Chang Yang-hu opened his mouth to say, "Fourth brother, tomorrow is the annual new student competition. There are plenty of rewards, and the first newcomer king can even win a rank 3 magic stone. The person in second place can win a rank 2 magic stone, and the person in third place can win a rank 1 magic stone. You have to try your best and earn first place." Chapter 13. Competition of the new students. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jian Chen's heart pounded after hearing that, eldest brother, aren't class 3 monster cores precious? Even though Jian Chen knew about monster cores, he was still ignorant in regards to their prices. Of course. Class 3 monster cores can be sold for more than 100 amethyst coins. I joined this academy 4 years ago, but I have never been able to use a class 3 monster core. The highest I've used was a class 2 core that cost me 50 amethyst coins. Chang Yang-hu's face started to show signs of heartache after saying that. Jian Chen began to plan it all out in his head. He quickly decided that he would try his best to win that class 3 monster core from the martial arts competition. Despite never using a class 3 monster core before, he knew that absorbing the energy contained inside would allow him to increase his rate of cultivation. He didn't know how fast he would be able to absorb world essence after taking the class 3 core, but he knew that by using it, the peak of the 10th Saint Force layer was within reach. As the sky gradually grew darker, Chang Yang-hu led Jian Chen down to the student dining hall. After the dinner they split off and went their own ways, returning to their dormitories. After returning to his room, Jian Chen closed the door and sat on his bed and to begin cultivating once more. However, he suddenly heard a knock on the door. Jian Chen looked at the door in confusion, before walking to the door and opening it. Standing outside the door was a 30-year-old woman wearing a light green dress. Although her beauty was not so much as to cause entire cities to war for her favor, she could still be considered beautiful. Her long, dark green hair went down to her shoulders, and gave off an impression as if it was floating. Is there something you needed? Jian Chen asked with some confusion. You are one of the new students of Kargath Academy. Tomorrow will be the Kargath Academy's annual freshman competition. It is mandatory for all new students to participate. Do not forget to come. She spoke with a tone that was as equally apathetic as her stare. Yes, I know. Is there anything else? Jian Chen asked. No. After dropping this word, the woman turned around to leave and walked to the next room. It seemed as if she had to notify every student one by one. Closing the door, Jian Chen returned to his bed and sat down on it. Quickly, he returned to a silent state of cultivation. The next morning, Jian Chen finished his night of cultivation, left his room and headed towards the dining hall alone. Since he left so early, there weren't many people up yet, so he was able to find himself an empty table to sit at due to the entire hall being almost empty. After eating his breakfast, Jian Chen headed towards the center of the academy grounds where the sports field were. The martial arts competition would be taking place in the stadium here. Along the way, Jian Chen noticed that he was surrounded by freshmen just like him, and they were also heading towards the sports field. Because the elder students all wore a school uniform, Jian Chen could clearly recognize which ones were freshmen. Although there weren't that many upperclassmen, perhaps they did not have much interest in the freshman competition. When Jian Chen arrived at the sports field, he could see 5 circles, each 30 feet in diameter, on top of the sports grounds. There were already many people already surrounding it. Jian Chen arrived at a tree a few meters away from the grounds. Quickly running towards the tree, he pushed off against the tree trunk to jump upwards towards the tree top. Settling down on the tree branch, Jian Chen started to rest in the shade, since it was still too early for the competition to start. He was in no rush to get there so early, and pointlessly suffer under the blazing sun. Time quickly passed. Soon, it was the time for the competition to start. At this time, the competition arena was already packed with thousands of students. Only a few of them wore student uniforms, everyone else was a new student. However, Jian Chen noticed that most of the freshman students who had achieved the 9th layer or better, were most definitely from commoner families. He made this judgment based on the new student uniforms they all had to wear. These people were wearing crude and coarse versions. This made sense given that the Jessen kingdom was predominantly comprised of commoners, and children from impoverished families were used to working hard. Thus, these kids worked hard to improve when cultivating Saint Force, and so were capable of reaching the 8th layer and joining Kargath Academy. Aside from those students, the rest of the freshmen seemed to be around 16 to 17 years old. There were even some year-olds. Jian Chen himself was 15 when he had reached the 8th layer, an achievement that could not be so easily replicated, and so it made Jian Chen the youngest student there. Despite that, Jian Chen's physical growth far surpassed anyone else. Although he was really 15 years old, he was built as if he were a few years older. After resting for a while, Jian Chen hopped to the ground nimbly and walked towards the competition area. Although a crowd was already forming, Jian Chen didn't try to force his way through. Instead, he calmly stood on the outside. Regarding the freshman martial arts competition, Jian Chen had no interest in it at all, even watching it didn't seem appealing to him. The only reason he would be participating today was because of the Class 3 Monster Corps. Everyone, quiet down. Suddenly, a loud piercing sound rang out. The cry was so loud, it was heard by everyone in the sports field and everybody immediately became quiet. In an instant, the whole field became absolutely silent. A white-robed, middle-aged man came walking up to the podium. The man looked like any other man his age, with no remarkable features. However, the light in his eyes was so bright, it looked as if he had a saint weapon hidden inside, making people afraid to stare straight into his eyes. Looking at everyone, the man smiled kindly. Speaking loudly in a friendly voice, he said, "Dear students, I am the Vice-Principal of Kargath Academy by N. I will be the one in charge of today's martial arts competition today, as well as being the one who makes up the rules. I am going to presume everyone has already seen the rules on the post board at the school gates, so I won't repeat it. The prize for this year is the same as always. The first place winner will win a Class 3 Monster Core, the runner-up will win the Class 2 Monster Core, and the third place winner will get the Class 1 Monster Core. Other than that, the top 50 participants in this competition will receive a single amethyst coin as a prize." Hearing this, every single student wearing the uniform of the commoners began to cheer in excitement. They did not spend much from day to day and only had simple food as their meal every day. A single gold coin was enough to feed a family of 3 for a month, and an amethyst coin was worth 100 gold coins. Although a monster core was a precious item, but none of them had any high hopes to win one since there were only 3 chances to earn one. But getting a single amethyst coin had 50 chances to be earned. At this moment, pretty much all the students from less privileged families could not help but become more excited. They all inwardly swore to themselves that for the sake of this amethyst coin, they would have to work hard to enter the top 50 spots. Looking at the jubilant expressions on the faces of the commoners, some of the nobles looked on with disdain. A single amethyst coin may not be such a small amount of money to a commoner, but to a noble, it was worth very little. Even Jian Chen had 50 amethyst coins on himself to use as he wished. The freshman martial arts competition began not long after. The students personally drew individual lots to draw tags from within a large container. However, the tags were covered by a piece of paper, making it impossible to see the numbers on them. The 2 pots had different labels. One of the pots were for students who had reached the 8th layer, while the other pot was for those who had reached the 9th layer. This method made sure that no student would fight another student from a different layer and make the outcome of the battle completely predictable from the start. Although Kargath Academy's lowest entry requirement was having reached the 8th Saint Force level, there were always some new people amongst the freshmen every year that were geniuses who were not at all lacking in terms of cultivation. It could also be said that there were a few treasured geniuses that had been given up by the aristocratic families, so there were always freshmen that had already achieved the 9th Saint Force layer admitted to the school every year. Drawing lots did not take long to accomplish, and soon enough it was Jian Chen's turn. Looking at the pot, Jian Chen casually grabbed a single tag from within. Unsealing the tag, he read the words with a relieved look, "Third stage, number 64. Seeing the number on the tag, he inwardly understood clearly that his opponent would be number 136 on the 3rd stage, because this time's competition matched opponents based on finding the 2 numbers that would give a sum of 200. After getting their tags, every student slowly walked towards their respective platforms while Jian Chen walked over to the 3rd platform. The competitions were progressing at a fast rate, as the first round of the competition only took half a day. Because Jian Chen's own opponent was not at all knowledgeable about how to fight with martial arts, Jian Chen had easily won and made his way into round 2. After eating lunch, the freshman martial arts competition continued. However, the number of competitors had decreased by half. It seemed like there were only 500 people present by the end of that first round. The second round was decided in the same way as the first round, with drawing lots. Because the amount of people that remained was far less than that of the first round, it had only took 4 hours to finish. By the end of the second round, 256 students were left standing. Coincidentally, since it was an even number, then there would not be an awkward situation where there would be a student that was left out of the drawings. Immediately heading into the third round, people began to draw lots to find their opponents. By night time, there were only 128 people that advanced onwards, with Jian Chen standing amongst them with a lazy expression. Leaving the competition grounds, Jian Chen noticed that the sky had long since darkened. He rubbed at his protesting stomach and shook his head with slight disappointment. In his previous world, he could have gone several days and nights without eating and still not feel hungry. Now that he was used to 3 meals a day, he now felt hungry after skipping a single meal, leaving Jian Chen to feel slightly disappointed with himself. Soon, Jian Chen arrived at the dining hall. After receiving his food, he found an empty seat and began to eat. Although the food was simple, completely incomparable to what he had in the Changyang household, Jian Chen still ate it with relish. Since the current freshman martial arts competition had just ended, the current number of people present in the dining hall was not any less than usual. In fact, there were so many people that not long after Jian Chen sat down, all of the seats in the dining hall had been filled. There were still many people who couldn't find available spaces. Although Jian Chen was sitting alone at a table, not a single person dared to sit together with him, since all the other students there were peasants. How could they possibly dare to sit with Jian Chen, who was wearing luxurious clothing? It was obvious at first glance that he was from an aristocratic family. Pine. Chapter 14. Tai Ta. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pine. Just as Jian Chen began to eat with relish, a hand suddenly slapped onto his shoulder, causing the table to shake from the action. Jian Chen scowled as he slowly lifted his head up. The owner of the hand belonged to a male noble around 20 years old. Beside him were 2 youths, with faces full of arrogance. One was a male, and one was a female, and both wore luxurious satin clothing. It was obvious from first glance that they were from wealthy families. Looking at the 3 nicely dressed students with a flat expression, he spoke with an annoyed expression, "Is there a problem?" The 20-year-old noble's face had an ominous glint as he stared at Jian Chen. Speaking arrogantly, the noble said, "Hey, brat. This table here belongs to us, you should sit somewhere else." Although the youth could tell that Jian Chen was by no means a commoner from the clothes he wore, the youth still did not bother to look at Jian Chen in the eye. Hearing what the male had said, Jian Chen looked at him with disdain and said, "If you want to eat, then sit down and eat. This table is for the entire school to enjoy, furthermore, the table doesn't have your name written on it. Since when did this table become yours?" After hearing this, the noble's face looked quite angry. Having already lost his patience, he shouted, "Are you going to move or not?" By this time, the spectacle at Jian Chen's table had already attracted the attention of everyone else. Although there were many people watching, no one had the audacity to step in to say something. A smirk appeared on Jian Chen's face. These type of occurrences happened many times in his past life, but he would always teach the other aggravators a lesson. "Of course I'll let you, just wait for me to finish my food first." Looking away, Jian Chen began to dig into his food with renewed interest. Because he stuffed his face full of food, Jian Chen's voice was slightly muffled. However, to these 3 people, Jian Chen's meaning was loud and clear. "Brother, it looks your power isn't enough in this school, you couldn't even claim a table. You'd better not make the 2 of us eat our food outside." The girl behind the noble lightly laughed. Hearing these words, the look of awkwardness on the face of the 20 years old or so young man disappeared, leaving only a look of anger. Staring viciously at Jian Chen, he shouted, "Kid, what is your name, and what family are you from? If you have the courage, tell me." Jian Chen's eyebrows creased together, but before he could say anything, another voice cried out, "Ka Di Yun, you are one of the upperclassmen of Kargath Academy, to think you have the nerve to bully one of the freshmen." The one who had spoken was another person about the same age as Ka Di Yun. He also wore the same academy uniform, and he walked towards them. Seeing this youth, Ka Di Yun's face slightly changed. His eyes showed a hint of fear, as he said, "By Mo Ran, you should not meddle in my affairs." At this point, Jian Chen knew the names of both people. The one from earlier was called Ka Di Yun, and the one that had just arrived was called by Mo Ran. The youth called by Mo Ran chuckled and said, "Ka Di Yun, it is true that your affairs are not for me to meddle in. But since I am an upperclassman, I cannot ignore the troubles of a junior. Hearing this, the faces of the two youths standing behind Ka Diyun changed. At this time, the girl standing behind Ka Diyun hesitated a bit, and then lightly tugged at Ka Diyun's clothes. She lightly whispered, "Big brother, there are some open seats over there, we should just go sit over there." Ka Diyun looked around the dining hall, and sure enough, a spot not too far away had opened up. Staring at Jian Chen with a ferocious glare, he waved his hand, "Second brother, third sister, let's go," he said as he started to walk over to the empty table. If he had continued with this spectacle, then there would have been no benefit for him. He was also slightly afraid of coming out as the loser, since Bymo Ran's clan was not at all weaker than the Ka Di clan. Bymo Ran himself was actually stronger than him. But that wasn't the most important aspect. The bigger matter at hand was that if word got out that an upperclassman like Ka Diyun was bullying one of the freshmen, then he would become the target of ridicule. Furthermore, if the headmaster heard about this, then he would definitely receive a strict punishment. Another reason why Ka Diyun wasn't willing to pick on commoners for their seats was for something that every upper-class men knew about within their hearts. As one of the 6 experts of the Jessen Kingdom, the headmaster of Kargath Academy was very partial towards the poor students. At that moment, Ka Diyun's sister looked at Jian Chen with renewed interest as if she suddenly recalled something. Opening her mouth, she said, "Oh, I just remembered. You're one of the 128 freshman students that made it into the next step of the competition. I saw you on top of the fighting arenas." As she spoke, the girl's eyes suddenly gained a malicious intent within them. Hearing this, the previously silent male turned around to say something, "I hope that I'll be matched up against you tomorrow in the competition then." With an evil laugh, he turned around and walked towards the empty table where Ka Diyun was heading towards. Taking in the words of that male student, Jian Chen didn't bother responding, nor did he care about the person at all. Bymo Ran walked on over to Jian Chen and patted his shoulder with a laugh, "You really have guts to not have given Ka Diyun face. If he tries to bully you in the future, then all you need to do is just look for me." Jian Chen stood up from his stool and smiled, "I am Changyang Xiang Tian. Thank you for helping me with this embarrassing situation, otherwise, I'm afraid it would have escalated into something troublesome." C. Bymo Ran started to chuckle, "Junior doesn't need to be this polite. Ka Diyun's clan has been fairly aggressive within the academy recently. I've long since found him to be quite annoying, but unfortunately, I could never find an opportunity to teach him a lesson." "Right, I am called Bymo Ran, you can just call me Senior Bymo Ran though. You'll want to be very careful in the competition tomorrow." The two people behind Ka Diyun were his younger sister Kai Di Chioli, and his younger brother Ka Di Liang. It's been rumored that both of them have already reached the 9th layer of Saint Force. Jian Chen only laughed and said, "Senior Bymo Ran, don't worry. If I end up seeing them, then I will definitely be careful." Nodding, Bymo Ran said, "It's getting late so I'll be returning to my dorm. Junior, I hope we'll see each other again." After Bymo Ran left, Jian Chen quickly finished up the rest of his meal before returning to his dorm. Throughout the entire day, he hadn't seen his older brother Changyang Hu at all. His actions and whereabouts were completely unknown. Casually sweeping away the dust in his room, Jian Chen climbed onto the bed and began to cultivate once more, as per accordance to the lessons. The second day of the competition quickly progressed. Because there were less and less people, the top 8 were quickly decided by the end of the day. After the top 50 had been established, the academy had cancelled the rule that prevented students from the 8th layer to fight against those from the 9th layer. The students were now free to fight with whomever they were matched up against, so aside from Jian Chen and another Suntan student, the other 6 students had already reached the 9th layer of Saint Force. In order for the Suntan student or Jian Chen to enter the top 8, they had to defeat some students who had already reached the 9th layer of Saint Force. Other than that, Jian Chen had ran into something unexpected. Of the 6 freshmen who reached the 9th layer, 2 of them were the students he had ran into yesterday. Ka Di Chioli and Ka Di Liang. Although Jian Chen had yet to fight against the two, he felt that each time he saw them, there was a hidden air of provocation between them. Regarding the two siblings' glares, Jian Chen paid no mind to them. In his mind, he could only think about pitting himself against the only other 8th layer St. Force freshman. That male student's martial arts style was clearly seen by Jian Chen, who thought that it was fairly unique that suited him greatly. His strength was extraordinary as well, which was the main reason why he had made it into the top 8 without any real trouble. His strength far surpassed those of anyone else his age, and half the opponents he had faced had been thrown out of the ring. The final matches were to be held tomorrow, and by the end of that, the freshman ruler would be announced. Leaving the sports grounds, Jian Chen immediately headed towards the dining hall. After getting his food, he saw out of the corner of his eye one of the competitors of the competition. It was the Sunten student. He was currently eating by himself in a corner of the room. The student was wearing simple clothing with a few patches over it. Although the male looked to be around 16 years old, Jian Chen could see a firm expression on his slightly immature face. His stature and build did not fit his age at all. He was already reaching a height of 1.8 meters, almost as tall as Jian Chen's brother, Chanyang Hu, and his girth was larger by a circle too. With a bit of hesitation, he walked towards the table where the Sunten student was eating, and sat down with his tray. Turning his head to greet him, Jian Chen smiled, "I am Chanyang Xiang Tian. What name do you go by?" Tilting his head up to meet Jian Chen, his eyes slowly swept over his clothes before he said, "I am called Tai Ta." Laughing, Jian Chen said, "I only recently saw you fight in the competition. To see a student of the 8th layer beat students of the 9th layer is truly amazing." Hearing Jian Chen's praise, Tai Ta couldn't help but laugh as well. "I only won because my strength was better than theirs, that's all. They were truly difficult to deal with, even now I'm still sore from the matches." Chapter 15. Ka Di Chioli. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hearing Tai Ta, Jian Chen couldn't help but ask, "Tai Ta, you say you have a great amount of strength, but how heavy of an object can you lift?" "When I was back at home, I could lift a 200-kilogram rock," he said quite arrogantly with a face full of pride. Jian Chen's face went blank as he heard that answer. This was a monster of a student. A 200-kilogram rock was impossible to lift for the average adult. But for a young boy like Tai Ta to be able to lift such a titanic rock, Jian Chen could only feel awe from this fact. "Tai Ta, how old are you?" Jian Chen had started to look at Tai Ta in a different light now. 16 years old. Tai Ta said as he munched on his food. His chewing caused his words to be almost inaudible. Jian Chen's impression of him grew even more as he said, "Tai Ta, did you have this strength since you were a kid?" "That's right, my strength was always stronger than most, but then so was my appetite. Because I couldn't always eat until I was full in my home, I usually went up to the mountains and hunted for my own food," Tai Ta said flatly. Taking in a deep breath, Jian Chen mentally confirmed that Tai Ta's strength was definitely a God-given power. Otherwise, a young boy like him would never have been able to lift such a heavy rock. But what surprised Jian Chen even more was that Tai Ta would frequently hunt by himself in the mountains. For someone who was barely 16 to be able to hunt with ease in the mountains, this made Jian Chen's respect for him grow by an extreme amount. After all, not only did wild beasts appear in the mountains, magical beasts would occasionally appear as well, and the latter's strengths were incomparable to those of regular wild beasts. Tai Ta rubbed at his stomach and stood up from his stool with a laugh. "Chanyang Xiang Tian, I've eaten my fill, so I'll be returning to my dorm to sleep. Tomorrow is another day of the competition after all." Jian Chen nodded his head. "I hope that you will make it into the top 3 in tomorrow's contest." Tai Ta fiercely nodded and a resolute look could be seen in his eyes. "I will definitely work hard and strive for the top 3. A single Class 1 monster core can be sold for at least 10 amethyst coins." Not long after Tai Ta had left, Jian Chen quickly ate his own food and returned to his room. Right as he closed the door behind him, a knock could be heard on it. "Fourth brother, are you here?" asked Changyang Hu in a strong voice. Hearing the voice, Jian Chen was surprised. It had been 2 full days since he had last seen any trace of his brother. Quickly opening the door, he invited Changyang Hu inside his room. "Fourth brother, I'm sorry but I haven't been keeping track with your progress in the competition," he hurriedly said before Jian Chen could open his mouth to ask a question. Jian Chen nodded his head and said, "I've already advanced onto the top 8, tomorrow will be the final day of the matches." As he listened to Jian Chen, Changyang Hu suddenly grew happy for his younger brother's success. Excitedly, he said, "Fourth brother, you are truly amazing. It's no wonder you came here before second sister and third brother." Fishing a thumb-sized crystal out of his pockets, Changyang Hu placed it within Jian Chen's hands. "Fourth brother, this is a Class 1 monster core. 2 days ago, a few friends and I went to the forest behind the academy and killed a Class 1 magical beast together. This is the monster core I fought to get for you, so take it. It's already getting late, so your big brother won't disturb your rest anymore. Tomorrow is the final day of the competition, so you must work hard and earn the number 1 title." Changyang Hu then exited from the room, after slowly closing the door shut. The moment before Changyang Hu could close the door, Jian Chen caught a glimpse of a 3-inch long claw mark that ran down Changyang Hu's arm. Silently looking at the Class 1 monster core in his hands, Jian Chen felt a wave of warmth that lingered. For a while, Jian Chen's heart was actually unable to calm down. Although it was only a Class 1 monster core, Jian Chen could feel Changyang Hu's concern radiating from it. Thinking back to the wound on Changyang Hu's arm, Jian Chen knew that the wound came from hunting a magical beast. Whenever Jian Chen thought about the gift, he couldn't help but feel warm inside, another emotion that he had never experienced in his previous life. After standing in the center of his room with a stunned expression for a while, Jian Chen finally took a deep breath, gradually forcing himself into a state of calm. Then, he got onto his bed to start cultivating once more. Although he had the monster core now, he did not want to use it just yet, so he stored it away in his space belt. With the competition in mind, Jian Chen fully believed that he could take the number 1 spot. After all, in his previous world, he was a unique expert that stood at the peak of the world. And although he had lost a great amount of his power after reincarnating, he still had the knowledge of every type of swordplay, as well as understanding the deep profound sword laws, so much that they were ingrained into his soul. He had not lost his understanding of the ways of the sword, and so this is how Jian Chen would advance through the continent in the future. The next morning, Jian Chen finished his breakfast quickly before arriving at the competition. Perhaps it was because today was the final day of the competition, but a lot more people came today than the 2 previous days combined. Many of these newcomers were older students. The fighting grounds had been fully fixed last night, and the original 5 arenas had been changed to 4. However, the 4 arenas were now larger than before. The arenas from yesterday were on a completely different level that couldn't be compared with the new sizes. At this moment, Jian Chen felt something behind him. Turning around, he saw his older brother Changyang Hu forging his way forward of the crowd, trying to reach him. Taking note of Jian Chen's stare, Changyang Hu smiled widely. Quickly detaching himself from the crowd, he ran up to Jian Chen's side and slapped him on the shoulder. "Fourth brother, today is the day you must work hard. Your big brother won't demand of you to get the number 1 spot, getting into the top 3 is good enough." To Changyang Hu, getting a monster core was only a minor reward, the most important thing was getting a good rank. Although the price of a monster core was not easily ignored, it was not something that the eldest son of the Changyang clan deeply desired. Jian Chen laughed and said, "Big brother, you don't have to worry. I definitely will not let you down." The time of the competition came quickly. This time, the top 8 would fight it out in the semi-finals. After drawing lots to decide their opponents, Jian Chen immediately walked onto the arena. Not long after, Jian Chen's opponent slowly came up into the arena, but to Jian Chen's surprise, his opponent was a girl. More precisely, his opponent was the girl from last time, Ka Di Chioli. Ka Di Chioli was wearing a dark red style of clothing, and although she was only 16 or 17 years old, her body was developing nicely. What should be sticking out was sticking out, and what should be thin was thin. Her skin-tight uniform sketched her out to be a true example of a beautiful woman with delicate white skin, along with her naturally beautiful face with tender white skin. At this point, she had already enraptured the attention of all the boys in the crowd and, without a doubt, Ka Di Chioli was definitely beautiful enough to cause cities to fight over her. However, as true as it was for most people born into a prestigious clan, she carried around with her an arrogant air. Jian Chen stood empty-handed on top of the arena. The reason why he was empty-handed was because of the academy rules. They believed that the best way to judge a person's strength was by empty-handed combat, and so bladed weapons were not allowed. And since it was not possible to form a saint weapon without being a saint, all of the freshmen were forced to fight without weapons. Ka Di Chioli looked at Jian Chen with a haughty look. "You really didn't let us down. For your arrogance in the dining hall the other day, I'll be sure to teach you a lesson today." Ka Di Chioli's voice carried a sharp but clear-sounding tone. Hearing this, Jian Chen's face revealed a grin of disdain. Within the people who were born within prestigious clans, many of them truly did not know how vast the heavens and earth were. Boom! A loud sound rung throughout the arena, signaling the start of the match. Because all four of the arenas were in the same place, the moment the gong was heard, all 8 participants simultaneously started to move and began to fight. Ka Di Chioli quickly strode towards Jian Chen, but when she was within 3 meters from him, she suddenly jumped up into the air to deliver a flying jump kick towards his face. Although Ka Di Chioli was young, she was fairly strong since she was already at the 9th Saint Force layer. Jian Chen stood in place without moving a single step. As Ka Di Chioli's foot got closer to his face, he tilted his neck sideways, allowing the kick to merely graze past the side of his head. Ka Di Chioli's reaction speed was fairly fast. The moment she realized her kick didn't connect, she swung out at his nose with a Saint Force enhanced fist. Not only was her fist coming in at rapid speeds, but with a huge amount of energy stored within her fist, any normal person would come out with serious injuries after being hit by that. As far as Jian Chen was concerned, she would not hold back. No matter if she ended up defeating Jian Chen and moving on into the top 4, or if she was just teaching Jian Chen a lesson, she would definitely not allow herself to hold back. Jian Chen dealt with Ka Di Chioli's attack with ease, and although his opponent was 1 layer higher than him, Jian Chen was not like an average child. His battle experiences from his past world were abundant, so if he wanted to continue this match without fighting back, then Ka Di Chioli wouldn't even be able to touch his clothes, much less beat him within 5 rounds. After Ka Di Chioli had tried to attack him a few dozen times without even being able to even touch Jian Chen's clothes, she grew extremely annoyed and stopped her barrage of blows. Panting slightly, she stuck both her hands by her waists and glared at Jian Chen. "Hey, are you going to actually fight or not? If you're not going to fight, then get off the arena instead of jumping around all over the place." Jian Chen laughed as he looked at the fuming Ka Di Chioli and said, "The person that'll be leaving the arena will be you, not me. How do you plan to beat me if you can't even touch my clothes? Why don't you?" Ka Di Chioli's naturally beautiful face grew red with anger as she pointed at him with her finger, and she was momentarily unable to speak. But then she grew calm and she rolled her eyes, sneering, "So what if I can't touch you? You can't even stand to fight me head-on, and can only dodge my blows like a little coward. Is that right?" Jian Chen's face revealed a hint of a smile as he looked at her with a strange expression. Ka Di Chioli looked on haughtily, speaking with complete conviction, "Of course. If you aren't a coward, then you'd better try actually fighting me." Jian Chen glanced over at the other 3 rings and saw that the other matches were beginning to wrap up. Turning his head back to look at Ka Di Chioli again, he laughed, "If you really want to fight me head-on, then fine, I'll grant you your wish." Chapter 16. Advancing into the finals. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hearing Jian Chen words, Ka Di Chili's eyes brightened. You said so yourself, so don't you dare try to say otherwise later. Ka Di Chili clearly had no desire to let Jian Chen prepare himself, so before she could even finish her sentence, she had already started to dash towards him. Just like the first blow, she leapt up into the air and lashed her leg out to kick him in the face, but this time the speed of her kick was much faster than her original one. Jian Chen gave an odd smile as the kick came closer. Just like he said earlier, Jian Chen didn't bother to dodge, but instead, as the kick was right in front of his face, both of his hands lashed out and grabbed onto Ka Di Chili's calf. Exerting a decent amount of strength while twisting around, he whirled her around in one smooth motion. As he threw her, Ka Di Chili cried out in panic as she was spun around by Jian Chen. Many of the surrounding students watching the event became dumbstruck. Not only did it seem like Jian Chen did not care for the fairer S*X and threw such a beautiful lady into the air in such a crude way, he had also defeated the last 6 opponents in the same manner. Under the arena, Ka Di felt the veins in his forehead throb as he watched his younger sister get mistreated in such a way. A murderous intent was focused on Jian Chen as he watched him. If it weren't for the vice headmaster Bai En presiding over the match nearby, then Ka Di would have charged onto the arena long ago to teach Jian Chen a lesson. Jian Chen's 2 arms were almost like strong pincers, clamping down onto her legs, as he spun her around twice before finally letting go. At that moment, one could only see Ka Di Chili's beautiful body streak across the sky in an arc, before finally flying out of the arena, and crashing into a group of people in the audience. He had learned this trick from Tai Ta. After watching Tai Ta in some of his matches, he saw that he had done a similar method to easily toss his opponents out of the arena. However, Jian Chen had to admit, this method was a very easy trick to pull off for a quick but easy victory, and could be done to certain people with ease. With only a tiny bit of disdain for the people in the audience who helped Ka Di Chili back to her feet, Jian Chen smirked as the referee proclaimed him the winner, before walking off the stage slowly. Blankly looking at Jian Chen walk off the arena, Ka Di Chili's face fell. Since she was born, she had been pampered by thousands of people as she grew. For her to suffer humiliation from being tossed into the air after being spun around like a top, she had felt that she lost face as well as being wronged, despite not getting injured. As she thought about this, Ka Di Chili's eyes started to tear up, and she eventually began to leak out streams of tears as she cried silently to herself. As Jian Chen walked down from the arena, Ka Di Chili's brother, Ka Di Yun, blocked his path. Glaring at him icily, he growled, "Kid, you really have some fucking courage to treat my sister like that." Jian Chen lazily glanced over at the furious Ka Di Yun and snorted. Without saying anything, Jian Chen walked away from him. Words were not worth wasting on him, because Jian Chen couldn't stand to hear Ka Di Yun try to use his clan's influence to bully others. Watching Jian Chen walk farther and farther away from him, Ka Di Yun's own face grew even more somber. With the end of Jian Chen's match, the final 4 names were called out. In the end it was Changyang Xiang Tian, Tai Ta, Ka Di Liang, and Tian Mu Xiong that remained. As far as Tai Ta was concerned, Jian Chen was not at all surprised that he had made it. However, Jian Chen did not think that Ka Di Liang would unexpectedly make it into the top 4. There was also the 4th participant, Tian Mu Xiong. His age wasn't all that different from Ka Di Chili. He had a medium-sized body, and a pale complexion. Although he was young, there was no doubt that he was handsome, with a perfect balance of his facial structures. Eddie Eat sitting on top of the platform was the vice headmaster, Bai En, who slowly looked over the 4 remaining students. With a small nod and a laugh, he announced, "It would appear that this year's freshmen are much stronger than the freshmen before them. I can only hope that our Kargath Academy will be able to boast of someone just as strong after." After announcing the 4 remaining students, they were given an hour of rest before continuing on with the competition. However, By some miraculous chance, Jian Chen's drawn opponent was Ka Di Liang, while Tai Ta's opponent was Tian Mu Xiong. Under the arena, Ka Di Yun and his siblings gathered at the bottom and watched. Ka Di Chiuli's eyes were starting to become red and inflamed by this point. Second brother, you have to teach him a lesson later. Ka Di Chiuli said with unrestrained fury to Ka Di Liang before the match started. Noticing his sister's red eyes and her tear-stained face, Ka Di Liang couldn't help but feel extremely furious as he spoke. Sister Chiuli, don't worry. Even if I get penalized by the academy, your second brother will definitely teach him a lesson. Humph, what a savage kid. To think that he would dare treat our sister like this, he really does have a death wish. Sister, please don't worry, I guarantee you, that kid will definitely only feel suffering for as long as he lives in this academy. Although the headmaster sides with the poor people, he is by no means a commoner. Even if I beat him until he's a cripple, the headmaster won't say a thing, at the very most, he'll just scold us. Ka Di Yun's face looked as if he swallowed poison. When it came to their sister, both Ka Di Yun and Ka Di Liang cared greatly for her. When Jian Chen had treated their sister in such a way, he had already earned extreme hatred from both of them. Soon, Jian Chen and Ka Di Liang both walked onto the arena, and waited for the start of the match. Right as the gong sounded, Ka Di Liang dashed towards Jian Chen and tried to slam his fist into Jian Chen's stomach. Jian Chen nimbly dodged Ka Di Liang's attack, while returning the blow with his own fist that was even faster than his opponent's. Pang! Before Ka Di Liang could even respond, Jian Chen's fist had already made contact with his back. The force of his punch was so strong, it forced Ka Di Liang to stagger backwards, before falling to his knees. After one blow, Jian Chen didn't bother to hold back. Both of his legs went into motion as he quickly ran towards where Ka Di Liang was kneeling. All of a sudden, the originally staggering Ka Di Liang suddenly lost his footing once more and was sent flying again. After being hit, he flew 2 meters towards the edge of the ring, almost knocking him out of it, though half of his body was already hanging out of it. Watching this display of might, every student watching Jian Chen all cried out in surprise. They had never imagined that in a single engagement, the victor would be so readily decided. This was something that every student thought was amazing. The 9th layer Saint Force student Ka Di Liang was being beaten so easily by the 8th Saint Force layer Jian Chen. Seeing half of Ka Di Liang's body sticking out from the ring, both Ka Di Chiuli's and Ka Di Yun's hearts leapt out from their chests and into their throats. Ai, how can second brother be this careless, how annoying. He'd better not lose to a brat like him. Ka Di Chiuli cried as she stamped her foot in anger. Though the longer she looked at Ka Di Liang, the more easily one could tell her face was full of concern for her older brother. Ka Di Yun let out a breath in exasperation. What is second brother doing for him to be this careless and lose to a brat who's only at the 8th Saint Force? On top of the platform, the vice headmaster Bai En smiled excitedly as he said, the freshmen we picked up this year are definitely jewels. One has been blessed by the heavens, while the other I can polish and shine in the future. While his attacks are simple, there is a strange sort of mystery to him. Every single time there is a crucial point in the match, he unleashes highly accurate moves with almost instantaneous reactions. These two students truly do require closer nurturing. I believe that in the future, these two will be great experts within the Tian Yuan continent. I'd better discuss this with the headmaster later. On the arena, Ka Di Liang scrambled to pick himself back up, his forehead already dripping with cold sweat. If his body had slipped just a few more inches, then there would be no doubt that his body would have fallen down from the arena. And then if he truly did lose to an 8th Saint Force layer student in such a disgraceful manner, he would definitely have been labeled as a great disgrace. When Ka Di Liang crawled back up and turned himself around, his surroundings suddenly blurred, and he was suddenly aware of an acute sense of pain in his stomach before he could fully comprehend what was happening. But then, his body felt as light as a feather, before he realized the stage was growing smaller and smaller. The next thing he knew, his body impacted the ground below, and his previously spotless white robes now sported a single dusty footprint. Blankly standing up from the ground, Ka Di Liang looked all around himself, before he fully comprehended what had just happened. Indignation burst forth from his eyes, as he shot Jian Chen a malicious glare. Although he had reached the 9th layer, he had ultimately been beaten by a student who had only reached the 8th layer, and felt his defeat was an extreme waste. Every time he thought of this, Ka Di Liang's heart filled with endless anger. To him, this was definitely a huge disgrace. Ka Di Yun walked up to Ka Di Liang and said, "Second brother, you've disappointed me. You have really lost face for our Ka Di clan." After dropping these words, Ka Di Yun didn't spare a second glance at Ka Di Liang, and immediately left the area. Hearing Ka Di Yun's words, Ka Di Liang's face immediately turned beyond ugly. "Second brother, you were too careless. Although you said that you would help me teach him a lesson, it ultimately became you being the one that was taught." Ka Di Chioli said resentfully in a disappointed voice, her tone quite indignant. Hearing this, Ka Di Liang's face changed as well, before growling, this was the extent of his luck. It was because of this arena that he won. If we were to change places, then there would be no way he would be an opponent for me. Third sister, don't worry, I will definitely teach him a lesson in the future. Ka Di Chioli began to think, she felt that his reasoning had some truth to it. Slowly nodding her head, she said, "Second brother, you'll have to teach him a lesson for sure next time." Ka Di Liang patted his chest, and solemnly vowed, "Don't worry, third sister. Leave this to me." Not too long after Jian Chen had won his match, the match between Tai Ta and Tian Mu Xiong also started to wrap up. Although Tai Ta's Saint Force was lower than his opponent by a single layer, his heavenly blessed strength helped make up for this deficiency. In the end, he relied on the experience he had learned from hunting beasts and was finally able to beat Tian Mu Xiong by a narrow victory. Along with Jian Chen, he became one of the 2 finalists. By the end of the next match, one of the 2 will emerge victorious and be crowned the freshman ruler. Chapter 17. Freshman ruler. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After resting for 2 hours, the competition finals finally started. Jian Chen and Tai Ta walked into the arena together before walking to opposite ends 10 meters apart. There were over 1,000 students watching the arena already, while even more people were trying to find seats. Jian Chen looked at Tai Ta with a smile as he spoke. He praised Tai Ta, "Tai Ta, I didn't think you were this amazing to be able to end up in the finals." Hearing Jian Chen's compliment, Tai Ta's face reddened from embarrassment, though it was obvious that he was very happy to hear the praise. With an honest laugh, Tai Ta spoke in a low voice, "Changyang Xiang Tian, you're just as amazing." Stretching his arms and legs, Jian Chen laughed, "Tai Ta, this is the final round. Only one of us will be crowned the freshman ruler, so you need to fight your hardest. If you beat me, then you'll be the champion. By winning, you'll earn a class 3 monster core that is worth a few hundred purple coins. It'll be worth enough to feed your family for a lifetime." Tai Ta grew pumped up after hearing Jian Chen talk. "Changyang Xiang Tian, I'll definitely use all of my strength, so you'd better prepare yourself." Jian Chen could only laugh and nod, "I won't be that easy to defeat." Boom! As the gong sounded to indicate the beginning of the match, Tai Ta immediately rushed forward after the sound. Tai Ta rushed at Jian Chen, and immediately reached out to grab him with both hands. He planned to use his heavenly blessed strength to lift and throw Jian Chen out of the arena. Realizing his plan, Jian Chen laughed. He was already extremely familiar with Tai Ta's style of fighting. For every single match so far, Tai Ta had used the same strategy, but it had worked nicely. If Jian Chen was caught by him, then it would be extremely difficult to escape from Tai Ta's grasp. Jian Chen retreated a few steps to escape from Tai Ta's reach. Clenching his left hand into a fist, he used around 80% of his strength to strike at his chest. Jian Chen's fist was well timed and fast, not allowing Tai Ta any time to react at all. Pang! Jian Chen's fist let out a muffled sound on impact against Tai Ta's chest. However, Jian Chen's look of satisfaction slowly changed, while Tai Ta had a look of amazement. What he had punched did not feel like a human at all, instead, his fist had felt like it had smashed against a wall. Not only was Tai Ta strong, but his physical body was extremely robust, so robust that it was actually beyond belief. Jian Chen's punch, however, had forced Tai Ta to stagger backwards, but only for a moment. Roaring out loud, he charged at Jian Chen once more with both of his hands outstretched. With a punch using only 80% of his strength, Jian Chen didn't even leave a mark on Tai Ta's skin. Jian Chen began to feel excitement as he watched Tai Ta come closer with his fists. He didn't bother to dodge or flee, instead, he prepared to use 100% of his power to strike back with his own hands. The two fists struck against each other in midair, and the impact created a loud sound. It was so loud, that everyone in the crowd below the arena could hear it as clear as day. As the two fists made contact, Jian Chen's feet couldn't help but slide backwards at least 10 meters before finally stopping. His right hand had already started to tremble, so it was clear to see that Jian Chen had taken more damage than given. Even though he had surpassed the average cultivation level for Saint Force, he was still far from the level where he could easily ignore damage from something like this. Tai Ta, on the other hand, only slid backwards 2 meters. His face showed no outward emotion, and he appeared to not have suffered even the smallest amount of damage. Jian Chen rubbed at his reddening hand. After 2 confrontations, he now fully understood how foolish it was to engage with Tai Ta straight on. Tai Ta's strength wasn't just used for intimidation, his body was actually inconceivably strong. Even someone a level stronger than Tai Ta could not be his equal. The only thing that could lead to victory against Tai Ta was if one relied on speed. Tai Ta, your strength has already far surpassed my expectations, but I'll be using my full strength now. Jian Chen said as he walked forward. Tai Ta laughed, come then, Changyang Xiang Tian, you won't be able to hurt me. Tai Ta's tone was filled with a fierce conviction. Jian Chen stopped his idle chatter as well. When the distance between him and Tai Ta had been reduced to only 5.6 meters, his footsteps suddenly changed. His legs became a mysterious blur that suddenly reappeared behind Tai Ta. Before Tai Ta could even react, 2 fierce fists landed consecutive blows on his back. Dong! 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 A constant series of muffled blows came ringing out from the arena, almost as if it was just a single continuous line of sounds. Under such heavy attacks, even Tai Ta's body couldn't help but falter forward so much that he was left with very little time to turn around. Ha! Tai Ta snarled in anger as he tried to steady himself. Suddenly, he turned around with his fists out and tried to smash them into Jian Chen. The moment when Tai Ta tried to attack Jian Chen, he lightly leapt 2 meters into the air. Narrowly dodging Tai Ta's fist, Jian Chen used both of his legs to kick at Tai Ta from midair. Both of his legs held formidable power, and they thrusted towards Tai Ta's back. Dong! 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 Jian Chen lashed out with his feet several times before landing back onto the ground. By this point, Tai Ta's face had been kicked by Jian Chen multiple times, causing his face to bruise all over. Immediately after landing on the ground, Jian Chen turned around on the floor and bent his legs down without pausing. His left leg revolved in a 180-degree arc, his right leg swept at Tai Ta's own legs. Pang! Tai Ta's leg crumbled down below him, but he immediately bounced back up, and snarled as he rushed at Jian Chen. Jian Chen and Tai Ta began to engage in another close combat situation, but with Tai Ta's God-given strength and his frighteningly robust body, Jian Chen had no chance of winning against him. Since Jian Chen had already experienced it twice, he had thought of a countermeasure for this situation. Although it wasn't the best idea, he had no other ways of fighting against him. Jian Chen had decided to rely on his nimbleness to fight against Tai Ta. Even though Tai Ta's body was extremely strong, Jian Chen had been attacking the same place on Tai Ta's body to make it so that Tai Ta would feel so much pain, he would eventually be forced to grimace. The following situation was now becoming one-sided. With Jian Chen relying on the experience he had accumulated over the past world to constantly beat Tai Ta so much that he could only run around with his hands over his head. Although at times Tai Ta had found some opportunities to fight back, he was not able to hurt Jian Chen, his attacks could not even touch Jian Chen's clothes at all. At this display, every student in the audience could only watch the match in shock. No matter how fast Jian Chen was with his martial arts, his speed had far outstripped the average person, causing all of the students to look on with great interest, as it was something they had never witnessed before. On the top of the platform, Bayan gasped in admiration as he watched Jian Chen. This kid is definitely a unique one, his battle experience is rich and his speed isn't slow at all either. It seems this student is called Changyang Xiang Tian, so judging from his name, he is from Lor City's Changyang clan. It seems that I really will have to make a report to the headmaster later. As the battle continued to persist, Tai Ta finally reached his limit. He cried out loud, and exclaimed, "Stop, stop. I can't fight anymore, I give up." Jian Chen immediately stopped his attack and smiled brightly at Tai Ta, "Why aren't you fighting anymore?" Tai Ta rubbed at the reddening spots where Jian Chen had repeatedly hit with a miserable face and said sadly, "You move so fast that I can't even see you clearly. There's no way I'd be able to attack you, so the entire time was just you wailing on me." Laughing, Jian Chen asked, "So you're just going to give up the number 1 spot then?" Although Jian Chen hadn't held back as he fought against Tai Ta, his skin was so thick and his body was so strong, that there was barely any serious damage done to him at all. Tai Ta nodded his head and spoke in a muffled voice, "I won't be able to beat you, so the number 1 spot isn't mine to have. Second place is already decent enough, a Class 2 monster core can be sold for a decent price too." Afterwards, the two students walked off the stage while the third-place winner was announced, Ka Di Liang and Tian Mu Xiong, who had fought it out against each other in a battle to determine the winner. In the end, it was Tian Mu Xiong who had won and claimed the title of third place. After the quota for the top 3 players was met, Jian Chen was called up onto the platform. As the vice headmaster Bai En walked towards him, he glanced at Jian Chen with no small amount of admiration. Immediately looking away, he turned his head to look at the 1,000 students in the audience and announced, "Dear students, this year's freshman competition has finally come to a conclusion. I declare the freshman ruler of this year to be the student Changyang Xiang Tian, who is an 8th Saint Force Layer practitioner." The vice headmaster Bayan spoke in a firm voice, causing everyone to applaud and cheer. But as some of the 9th Saint Force Layer students heard the new freshman ruler was at the 8th Saint Force Layer, many of them couldn't accept that. However, they could only grumble out their displeasure. But Jian Chen's strength was something they could accept, some of them had even been dazzled by the way he fought, and his speed was something that not many people could dismiss. This year's freshmen are really too useless. In front of so many people that had reached the 9th Saint Force level, the final freshman ruler ended up being a youth at the 8th Saint Force Layer. This is really too embarrassing. That's true, today's freshmen were really too weak. Not only was the title of freshman ruler taken by a person at the 8th Saint Force Layer, I heard that the suntanned youth in second place was also someone who was only at the 8th Saint Force Layer. I really don't know what these freshmen had practiced to the 9th Saint Force Layer for. The two people that spoke were seniors wearing the academy uniform, their tone were filled with a mocking voice towards those who had lost against the two. Hearing the two students complain, another one of the seniors replied to them, "You guys shouldn't even say anything, it's not that those freshmen who reached the 9th Saint Force Layer were weak, but it's because those 8th Saint Force Layer students were stronger than them by a large margin. That suntan kid had strength that could scare anyone. Don't tell me you guys didn't see how those 9th Saint Force Layer students were easily thrown out of the arena. If it were us that were fighting instead, I'm sure that we wouldn't have been better off than the freshmen." As for that first place freshman, his strength was even more terrifying. Did you guys also miss how fast he was moving around and attacking? Even if it were us in that same situation, we would have a hard time trying to dodge his attacks. Other than those two students, many other seniors of the academy were also discussing the matches amongst themselves. They had already been at the academy for so many years, but this year's competition had left them speechless. This year's freshman batch had many students who reached the 9th Saint Force layer, but no one had expected that the top two students would be 8th Saint Force layer students. Soon after, Jian Chen obtained the Class 3 Monster Core as a reward. It was a deep red in color, and was bigger than the Monster Core than the one his brother had given him earlier. Holding his hand up, Jian Chen could clearly feel the huge amount of power radiating from the core. The huge amount of energy in the core and the true qi in his previous world had a very small difference, but as far as Jian Chen was concerned, the energy coming from the core was extremely huge. Aside from the Monster Core, Jian Chen had also received a medal that was cast in complete gold with a decorative design written on it. From what Jian Chen had heard, there was no information on the medal he had won, so he had no idea what use the medal was for. But as he was trying to figure it out, the vice headmaster Bai En explained to him, this medal can only be rewarded to the first place winner of every freshman competition. As long as you have this, then you will be given a Class 1 Monster Core every month. Other than that, the medal allows the wearer to access the first 5 layers of the library. Chapter 18. The Monster Core's cultivation rate support. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Every month a Class 1 Monster Core will be given, as well as free access to the first 5 levels of the library. Hearing Bai En's explanation, Jian Chen's heart swelled up in marvel. Could it be that the students weren't able to even get a Monster Core every month? And who would have thought that the library would have a restriction imposed on it? Receiving the medal, Jian Chen had already planned to ask his brother Changyang Hu about this later. He had already been in this academy for 3 or 4 days, but 3 of the days had been completely occupied by the martial arts competition. Even for the first day, he had barely half the day to himself, so he had very little time to find out more about the academy. After Jian Chen exited from the arena, both Tai Ta and Tian Mu Xiong walked forward to accept their own prizes. After the ending ceremony, the crowd of students had already begun to disperse. Fourth brother, you're seriously amazing. You really did win first place in the competition. Once father hears about this, he'll definitely be very happy about this. As the two walked towards his dorm, Changyang Hu kept chattering away happily with Jian Chen. As the two continued to talk, Jian Chen started to laugh, as he couldn't help but feel the warm feelings he had remembered from his mother. If mother found out about this, she would definitely be beyond happy. Jian Chen thought to himself. In a flash, Changyang Hu and Jian Chen arrived at the dorms and entered Jian Chen's room. Changyang Hu impatiently asked Jian Chen, fourth brother, hurry up and show me the Class 3 Monster Core. Looking at Changyang Hu's still excited expression, Jian Chen laughed and brought out the Monster Core from his space belt, handing it over to Changyang Hu. Changyang Hu took the core into his hand and turned it around endlessly, almost as if it was a treasured object. He clicked his tongue in admiration, fourth brother, you're seriously amazing, to immediately get a Class 3 Monster Core straight after entering the academy. Your older brother has already been at this academy for over 2 years, and the most I ever got was a Class 2 Monster Core. Moreover, I had to pay money for it. Hearing this, Jian Chen could only chuckle, big brother, I've heard that you've already reached the peak of the 10th layer and will soon break through to the Saint level. You should take this Class 3 Monster Core. Jian Chen didn't regard the Monster Core as an important item, and although the Class 3 Monster Core would increase the rate of cultivation, Jian Chen didn't need it at all. Changyang Hu was stunned at Jian Chen's words, but he quickly regained his wits and placed the Class 3 Monster Core back within Jian Chen's hands and said, that won't do. This Class 3 Monster Core was something that fourth brother got after going through a painstaking amount of trouble. How could your big brother take something like this? Looking at the newly returned Class 3 Monster Core, Jian Chen smiled, He truly admired his big brother's actions just then. At the very least, he wouldn't have to worry that Changyang Hu would be like third brother Changyang Ku, and become an obstacle towards him. Once again, Jian Chen placed the Class 3 Monster Core in Changyang Hu's hands. Big brother, this Class 3 Monster Core would be best with you. This time, Jian Chen really wanted Changyang Hu to accept the Monster Core. Definitely not. Changyang Hu's refusal came out strong and clear, without any hesitation. He handed the Monster Core back to Jian Chen and said, "Fourth brother, this Monster Core should be used by you. This is your reward for being the freshman ruler. This item is definitely not something your big brother would want from you." Seeing how persistent his brother Changyang Hu was, Jian Chen could only helplessly take back the Class 3 Monster Core. After that, Jian Chen began to ask his older brother a few questions regarding the affairs of the academy. It had taken 3 hours for Changyang Hu to carefully explain every single rule that Jian Chen didn't understand about the academy, increasing Jian Chen's familiarity with the academy. First was Kargath Academy's headmaster, who favored students that weren't from a noble background. If he found a noble bullying a commoner, the student would definitely not be able to escape from punishment. Regarding battles between nobles, he would turn a blind eye, as long as it didn't turn into a major deal. Other than that, he didn't care about them at all. Also, within the Kargath Academy, one would have to reach the Great Saint level in order to graduate. Those who graduate had the choice to remain in the academy, or with the Kargath Academy's recommendation, they could vow loyalty to a kingdom and join their army. Those with a great amount of potential would be able to earn a higher salary with the academy's recommendation. Within the academy, those under the level of a saint would have the chance to receive a Class 1 Monster Core every month to use to help their cultivations. The students who were at the saint level and condensed a saint weapon would be able to earn a Class 2 Monster Core every month. Aside from this, these students would also be able to go to the forest 20 miles away from the Kargath Academy to hunt magical beasts for their cores. Although the forest wasn't big, it still took up around 10 kilometers of area. The magical beasts inside the forest were all set free by the academy, but most of them were generally low-leveled magical beasts. Their attack strengths were amongst the lowest of the beasts, and receiving a serious injury was unlikely. Kargath Academy bred these low-leveled magical beasts for the students to practice their martial arts in a real combat situation, as well as to allow the magical beasts to adapt to the wild. The strongest magical beast in the forest was no stronger than a Class 2 beast, while many of the animals were just regular wild beasts who couldn't even measure up to a Class 1 magical beast. However, if a Class 2 magical beast were to appear, then the academy would send out a few experts to take care of the monster in order to prevent the students from getting hurt. The forest was separated into 3 regions. The first region was full of wild beasts who didn't even reach the level of a Class 1 magical beast. The second region was a place where Class 1 magical beasts dwelled. The final region was full of Class 2 magical beasts. All 3 areas had been successfully sealed and blockaded against the other areas by the previous generations of the headmaster, so no one would have to worry about the monsters escaping from the forest. The academy also had a library, which was separated into 7 levels. Inside the library was a great amount of books, with an abundant amount of information. Aside from books about the continent's history, there were also many secret training manuals for practitioners. Students who had not yet reached saint level would only be able to access the first 2 levels of the library. The moment a student reaches the level of a saint and condenses her saint force into a saint weapon, then she would be able to enter the 3rd and 4th levels. For any level above the 4th, the only people who could enter were teachers, or students at Great Saint level. By the time Changyang Hu had finished telling Jian Chen about the information regarding the school, it was already quite late during the night. Changyang Hu thus hurried out of Jian Chen's dorm, and ran towards his own dormitory. Meanwhile, at the top of a tower that was situated in the center of Kargath Academy, the vice-headmaster Bayan respectfully stood in front of an office desk. In front of him was actually the headmaster Jian Chen had met before. The headmaster of Kargath Academy extended his arm and stroked his long beard. Indifferently looking at the vice-headmaster, he said, "Bayan, did you say that the name of the freshman who won the competition was a kid called Changyang Xiang Tian?" The headmaster's tone held a hint of surprise. Bayan nodded his head and said, "Yes, headmaster, I found out that Changyang Xiang Tian is quite remarkable. He is only at the 8th layer of Saint Force, but can already defeat freshmen that are at the 9th layer. His attacks are not only aggressive, but also quite agile and nimble. It also seems that he has plenty of combat experience, which does not match up with the strength he should have. Even Tai Ta, who has a body with heavenly force, lost to Jian Chen in a simple manner, unable to even counterattack." Hearing this, the headmaster furrowed his brows and asked, "Bayan, is what you're saying really true? Is Changyang Xiang Tian really that amazing?" "Headmaster, everything I said is the truth," said Bayan in a firm voice. The headmaster slowly rose from his chair and muttered, "It looks like this kid Changyang Xiang Tian is a bigger genius than Chang Bai said. He didn't use any sort of monster core or heavenly treasure, and was still able to reach the 8th layer of the Saint Force by the age of 15, how astonishing of a feat to think that he also has an abundant amount of battle experience, something like this is unfathomable." Even the headmaster's voice carried a hint of astonishment. Hearing the headmaster mumble to himself, Bayan also had an astonished look on his face. The fact that he had not used any heavenly treasure or monster core to reach the 8th layer by the age of 15 was a type of talent within the Jesson Kingdom that could only be regarded as something a gifted genius could have. "Headmaster, it looks like this Changyang Xiang Tian has a limitless future." Bayan sighed. The headmaster nodded his head and said, "As long as he can continue to grow this way, then the skill he displayed today will definitely develop into something greater. It looks like our Kargath Academy will finally be able to boast of a strong individual, as long as he doesn't die on the road to greatness. As long as he really grows into a strong individual of the Tian Yuan continent, then not only our Kargath Academy become well known, but our Jesson Kingdom's reputation within the continent would also increase. Right now, the surrounding kingdoms around us are getting more and more restless. After these 10 or so years, if our Jesson Kingdom doesn't have any strong individuals, then I'm afraid that sooner or later, one of the kingdoms around us will attack." After hearing this, Bayan's face gradually grew solemn. The Jesson Kingdom was neither a big kingdom nor a small kingdom, but it had fertile lands that many of the surrounding kingdoms were envious of. If it were not for the 6 experts of Jesson Kingdom, then the surrounding kingdoms would have long since attacked them. Bayan pondered for a bit, before carefully asking, "Headmaster, should we consider giving away Class 1 and 2 monster cores to Changyang Xiang Tian for free then? That way, we could improve our relationship with him." The headmaster considered the vice-headmaster's proposal for a bit, before shaking his head, "That won't be possible. Although using a monster core can be used to increase one's cultivation rate, there are side effects of abusing it. Changyang Xiang Tian is currently very young, we cannot allow him to become addicted to using monster cores. Otherwise, when he reaches the later levels, his foundation will be very shaky, which will obstruct his future progress. At his current age, he should quietly focus on self-discipline. It would help lay down the foundations and increase his chance of success in making a breakthrough." "Yes, headmaster. Bayan understands what to do now." Bayan didn't dare to act against the headmaster. Besides, what the headmaster had said made plenty of sense. "Headmaster, how do you plan to handle Tai Ta?" Bayan asked. "Tomorrow morning, bring Tai Ta to me. If he is willing, I will take him in as a personal disciple." The headmaster replied after thinking about it for a while. "Yes, headmaster." After Changyang who left his room, Jian Chen sat on his bed and contemplated the new information for a while. Afterwards, he crossed his legs, and with the Class 3 monster core in his hand, he began to absorb the energy from the Class 3 monster core into his body. Inside the monster core was the soul of a magical beast. The energy within was not only pure, but also fairly strong. According to what Chang Yang Hu had said, the moment Jian Chen started to absorb the monster core, then he would start to feel a long stream of pure and strong energy flowing out of the core. It would flow up through his arm, and slowly be absorbed within his body. Jian Chen manipulated the constant outward flow from the monster core to guide the energy into his body. Constantly refining the energy into his body, he gradually changed the energy into Saint Force, before gradually absorbing it into his Dantian. Using a monster core to cultivate really did increase the cultivation rate by many times. Because of the normal way of cultivation, one would normally have to absorb the world essence slowly before finally converting to one's own energy, but that couldn't compare to the speed of a monster core. The natural chi couldn't compare to the pure soul energy of a monster core. After all, the soul of a monster core was the purest part of the beast. Using the energy from a monster core, the speed of cultivation would increase by 10 times. For this reason, monster cores were extremely expensive, even if it was only a class 1 monster core. Multiple rays of light gradually appeared between the sky and land. The bright red sun finally struggled to climb into the sky, sending forth the soft and warm rays of sunlight. The golden sunlight with tens of thousands of rays of light illuminated the earth, as if the whole ground was dyed into a golden carpet. At the same time, the Jian Chen who was sitting cross-legged on the bed slowly opened his eyes. His eyes showed a happy expression, and the corners of his mouth also showed a hint of a smile. After last night's cultivation, Jian Chen had received many gains, equivalent to a few days' worth of training. By absorbing the power within the magical stone, Jian Chen's cultivation speed had actually increased by 10 times. Right now, he could clearly feel that the saint power inside his body had increased by a ton. Based on his calculations, he wasn't far from reaching the 9th Saint Force layer. According to his current speed, at most it would only take a weekend's worth of time to reach the 9th Saint Force layer. Of course, this was only Jian Chen's estimate. The exact values had to be tested. If the fact that the amount of power that Jian Chen had absorbed from within the magical stone was 10 times more than the amount normally gained from cultivating was discovered by others, they would definitely be devastated from shock. Even though the magical stone could quickly increase the rate of cultivation, it was also far from achieving the frightening pace of 10 times faster under normal circumstances. The average person using the magical stone to cultivate would normally only increase cultivation rate by 2 or 3 times. Even if the person was slightly more powerful, his or her cultivation rate would only be raised by 6 or 7 times. Considering the fact that Jian Chen's power wasn't even saint level, the fact that he could increase his cultivation rate by 10 times was definitely an extremely frightening pace. Seeing the magic stone in his hands, although the stone's color didn't change at all, Jian Chen clearly felt that the magic stone had shrunk by a circle after being gripped in his hand for the whole time. After leaving the dorm, Jian Chen directly arrived at the dining hall. This morning, the dining hall's breakfast was a bit more plentiful. Besides from a glass of magical beast milk, there was also some magical beast meat. Jian Chen had eaten quite a bit of magical beast meat in the Changyang household, and the taste was quite delicious. In his previous world, Jian Chen had never eaten such savory meat before. Chapter 19. Inconvenience. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a flash, 3 days had already passed. Although the 3 days were not long, it still allowed Jian Chen to become more accustomed to the lifestyle and environment in Kargath Academy. Within these 3 days, other than Jian Chen participating in classes on the first day, he had spent his time on the other 2 days either cultivating in his room or wandering around the library. Due to the fact that the curriculum taught by the teachers of the academy revolved around how one should behave, what should be done in a dangerous situation, and a few skills one would need in order to survive out in the areas outside the cities, Jian Chen felt that these things weren't even worth learning. He was a wanderer in his previous life. With his experience, he could teach those teachers how the class should be taught. With his battle experience and ability to live wherever in the world, he could teach both the teachers and the students by himself. As the teacher's experience with battle was not at all extensive, it could not even be compared to Jian Chen's. The next morning, Jian Chen put on the academy uniform and headed straight for the library after eating a meal at the dining hall. The academy was very lax about their classes. If one wanted to attend, then they could attend; if one didn't want to attend, then that was no problem either. After all, most of the nobles and children of rich families had already been tutored since young, so they had knowledge that could rival some of the teachers, but they lacked the experience. Therefore, the classes were pretty much only for the commoners to learn from. It was very rare that a noble would attend a class, and if they did, then it was a minor noble. Arriving at the first level of the library, Jian Chen took a few books, and began to eagerly read them at a table in the reading area. Kargath Academy's library was expansive, and there was a generous amount of books on almost every subject. It was vastly superior to the library back in Changyang Mansion, and Jian Chen could find many books that couldn't be found back at home, helping him understand the world to a better extent. Right now, the book in Jian Chen's hands was an introduction book to all of the magical beasts that could be found in the Tian Yuan continent. There were many different kinds of magical beasts. No matter if the beast could walk or fly, the amount of species amounted to over 1,000. The book even mentioned that there were still many magical beasts left undiscovered, and for the magical beasts that didn't live within the deep abyss of the mountain range of magical beasts, then they lived in the endless ocean. That was an area that even the strongest of people had trouble traveling to. As Jian Chen immersed himself in studying, a 16.17-year-old female student suddenly came walking through the doors. The female was extraordinarily pretty, and she also wore the academy uniform. Her long and beautiful hair was carefully braided into tiny ponytails, causing her face to look even more gorgeous. But on her face was an extremely haughty expression. One look at her would reveal that she was from a noble family. This female was actually Ka Di Chiolyo of the Ka Di clan. Ka Di Chiolyo entered the library and walked over to the bookshelf, before casually walking on over the reading area with a book in hand. She glanced over at the other students reading there, but the moment her eyes swept over to the area with the tables, she saw the back of Jian Chen, causing her to immediately stop where she was and stand there in surprise. Ka Di Chiolyo focused onto Jian Chen's back, the light in her eyes never ceasing to flicker with emotion. Just thinking about how, a few days ago, she had been grabbed by the leg and casually thrown out of the arena without regard to her well-being, caused her to feel fury within herself. To her, that event was an unforgettable humiliation. The memory caused her face to boil over in anger before she snorted. No longer in the mood to read a book, she tossed it aside and stamped out of the library while gnashing at her teeth. Changyang Xiang Tian, I'll definitely show you one day. But Jian Chen did not notice Ka Di Chiolyo at all, since he was completely focused on the book he was reading. No one would dare cause trouble in the library, so Jian Chen didn't bother keeping his guard up in it. After Ka Di Chiolyo left the library, she immediately found her second brother, Ka Di Liang, who was practicing his martial arts alone in the forest. Seeing Ka Di Chiolyo walk over, Ka Di Liang stopped his movements and laughed. "Third sister, didn't you say you were going to the library? Why are you looking for me here then?" In his heart, he still dearly loved his younger sister. Ka Di Chiolyo walked up to him with a grimace. "Second brother, did you not say you would help me teach Changyang Xiang Tian a lesson?" Immediately after hearing Changyang Xiang Tian, the smile on Ka Di Liang's face disappeared, and a gloomy expression replaced it. He had been brooding over the freshman competition for the past few days, and since he had been defeated by an 8th Saint Force Layer student in such an ugly way, Ka Di Liang would never forget feeling that memory. That very kick was the single memoriam of his disgrace. Ka Di Chiolyo was furious as she spoke. "Second brother, Changyang Xiang Tian was in the library today, we should go over there and teach him a lesson." "Yes, of course, this time we will definitely be the winners. Come with me, third sister." Ka Di Liang started to walk towards the library with determination. There was no way he would admit defeat to Jian Chen. He had blamed his loss the other day due to his carelessness. It was because he had held back that he had lost to Jian Chen. This time the high and mighty Ka Di Liang would not accept defeat. Ka Di Chiuli started to show excitement. This time, second brother must definitely give the brat Changyang Xiang Tian a lesson he'll never forget, she said, as she followed him to the library. Even though the two of them were both at the 9th layer of Saint Force, she knew that she was still no match for her older brother. And if Ka Di Liang were to lose against Changyang Xiang Tian, then there would be no way she would be able to win. At the library, Jian Chen was still deeply engrossed with his book. "Hello, do you mind if I sit down here?" At this moment, a crisp voice came from the side of Jian Chen. Although he was deeply engrossed in his book, Jian Chen's soul was formidably strong, and brought him back to awareness. Reflexively turning his head, Jian Chen saw a 17.18-year-old female standing right next to him. She wore an academy uniform, and had long black hair cascading down her shoulders. She had a refined, but kind smile, with eyes that looked curiously at Jian Chen. With her cherry-red lips, there were people who were practically fighting each other to get closer to her. Although she was only 17.18, her body was so delicately refined that the academy uniform nicely accentuated her. Currently, the girl was hugging a thick book close to her. Jian Chen casually looked at her before turning around to look around the room. He hadn't realized that all of the tables were so full that not a single spot was left to sit down. Looking back to the beautiful female, Jian Chen answered, "Go ahead." Returning his eyes back to his book, he didn't bother to look at her even though she was so pretty. The girl looked at the engrossed Jian Chen with a strange look. Her eyes shined with a peculiar look as she sat down. "Thank you," she said gently. Her voice was gentle sounding. Anyone who heard her talk would feel comforted. Jian Chen didn't hear her words however, as he was already too absorbed in reading his book again. In his eyes, he could only see the book. The girl looked at Jian Chen with curiosity again, but she didn't say anything, and sat down with her book she was holding. She looked graceful as she slowly thumbed through her book, even though it was such a simple action. This gracefulness was an inherent talent of a noble, and suited her well. The library was very peaceful. Even though there weren't that many people, none of them made a sound, as they concentrated on their respective books. At that moment, a male and a female student came through the gates of the library. It was the siblings, Ka Di Liang and Ka Di Chiuli. "Second brother, look, he's right over there." Ka Di Chiuli pointed at Jian Chen. Bvec Ka Di Liang looked to where Ka Di Chiuli was pointing, and sure enough, he saw the all-too-familiar body figure. He looked on with disdain as he advanced towards him with his head held high and an arrogant face. With his head high and chest out, he walked towards Jian Chen with Ka Di Chiuli closely trailing behind. Pang! The moment Ka Di Liang got to the table Jian Chen was at, he slammed his hand onto the table, causing a large sound to echo out into the previously silent room. The sudden noise attracted the attentions of all the people reading, and their gazes all moved away from their books. One by one they began to observe Jian Chen's table. Aside from a few people furrowing their brows, most people carried amused expressions. Jian Chen knit his brows, and slowly lifted his head. He looked straight at Ka Di Liang, and said heavily with a hint of anger, "What are you doing?" At this moment, even the girl sitting across from Jian Chen had furrowed her brows, and she looked at Ka Di Liang in annoyance, her face also carrying hints of anger. The sudden loud noise by her ear had scared her while she was peacefully absorbed in reading her book. Ka Di Liang looked at Jian Chen with contempt, and haughtily said, "Changyang Xiang Tian, I, Ka Di Liang, formally want to request a duel. Do you dare to accept?" Ka Di Liang's voice resonated through the entire first floor of the library, as if he were afraid nobody would be able to hear it. "Duel." Jian Chen's face showed a hint of disdain, and he lightly snorted, "I'm not interested, so please leave this area immediately. Don't disturb my reading, I don't have the luxury of wasting time on you." Realizing that Jian Chen was not seeing him as his equal, Ka Di Liang's eyes flashed with anger. Glaring at Jian Chen, he ground his teeth, and forcefully squeezed out the words, "Do you dare to or not?" Chapter 20. Challenge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jian Chen couldn't help but feel fury from Ka Di Liang's arrogance. Holding his own head up to look at him with disdain, Jian Chen said, "You were defeated by me before, what right do you have to demand a challenge from me?" Even now, Jian Chen's own tone carried a hint of arrogance that he had carried over from his previous world. This was a habitual attitude that somehow came out by accident. Hearing Jian Chen's words, Ka Di Liang's handsome face went deathly white. Extreme anger flashed through his eyes, but he didn't dare to break the pacifistic rules of the library, otherwise he would have long since attacked Jian Chen. Even Ka Di Chiuli, who was standing by her brother's side, was indignant. Glaring at Jian Chen, she started to jeer, "Humph, you won't even accept my brother's challenge to a duel, what kind of man are you?" Hearing Ka Di Chiuli back him up, Ka Di Liang's eyes brightened up and felt re-energized. "That's right, not accepting a duel, that's what a coward does. Changyang Xiang Tian, I'll be waiting for you at the fighting arena. If you admit that you're a coward, then don't come. Third sister, let's go to the arena." After that, Ka Di Liang glared at Jian Chen before turning around to exit the library. "Humph, Changyang Xiang Tian, you better come, you're a coward if you don't show up." Ka Di Chiuli cried out as she followed her brother. "Changyang Xiang Tian, isn't that the new freshman ruler from the competition?" "Seems about right. I heard that Changyang Xiang Tian is at the 8th Saint Force layer, but he ended up beating several students who were a layer higher, how amazing." After Ka Di Chiuli left, the entire library started to buzz with comments. Everyone was starting to comment about the freshman ruler, Changyang Xiang Tian. Even the girl who was sitting next to Jian Chen had a small look of astonishment as she looked at him. Her eyes were blinking rapidly from this development, and it was clear to see that she had not expected Jian Chen to be the freshman ruler. Jian Chen slowly clasped shut the book in his hand, with a face that was unsightly to see. After the two siblings from the Ka Di clan disturbed him, he was no longer in the mood to read. Plus, Jian Chen had no other choice but to accept the challenge after it was issued, otherwise the entire academy would look down on him. Although Jian Chen didn't really care about his own reputation, he was one of the symbols of the Changyang clan. Since his older brother wasn't around, he would have to take up the challenge himself to make sure the Changyang clan didn't get sullied. At the same time, Jian Chen didn't want Changyang Hu to be ridiculed for having such a cowardly brother. Slowly standing up from his chair, he grabbed the few books he had with him and returned them to the bookshelf. After the books were neatly shelved, Jian Chen began to walk out of the library. At that moment, the entire library watched Jian Chen's movements. "Hey, Changyang Xiang Tian." As Jian Chen reached the gates of the library, the female who was sitting next to him called out to him. Turning around in surprise, Jian Chen looked at the beautiful girl with an even look, "Yes." Hearing the even tone in his voice, the girl couldn't help but pout, but she didn't say anything and instead walked up to Jian Chen and said, "Changyang Xiang Tian, are you really going to accept his challenge at the arena?" "Of course." Jian Chen nodded. "You don't actually have to accept his challenge at all. The library banned any sort of loud noises, so those people have already violated the rules imposed by the academy. You could just go and report this to the headmaster, and he'll definitely penalize those two. In Kargath Academy, no one has ever dared to go against the headmaster's command," the girl said. Hearing these words, Jian Chen started to look at the girl in a better light. With a light laugh, he said, "They've already issued the challenge, so I have to accept." After saying that, he said no more, and left the library. As the girl watched Jian Chen's figure disappear, her eyes quickly flashed. After some hesitation, she immediately ran to the table she had been sitting to return the thick book she had been reading back to the shelves, and ran out of the library, towards the martial arts arena. After the girl left, the entire library was silent for a moment. Suddenly, a loud voice rang out, "There's another interesting scene to watch." A freshman at the 8th St. Force layer is battling against a person at the 9th St. Force layer. Anyone who doesn't watch it would be a fool. A male in his teens wearing the school uniform said as he directly ran out of the library after both these people had left. The few other students that had been reading in the library also returned the books in their hands to the shelves, and left the library one after another, running towards the martial arts arena. The school's martial arts arena was constructed in a corner of the sports field. Within it, there were 5 circular platforms, each one being approximately 20 meters in diameter. However, the insides of the martial arts arena was not that large, and could only comfortably fit 100 spectators. Otherwise, the freshman martial arts competition a few days ago wouldn't have been held at the temporarily modified stages on the sports field. When Jian Chen arrived at the martial arts arena, he only saw Ka Di Liang standing on one of the platforms with his arms crossed, with an arrogant expression on his face. Standing below the platform were Ka Di Chioli and a few other students wearing the academy uniforms, who were all absorbed in deep discussions. Seeing Jian Chen arriving from the distance, Ka Di Liang, who was standing on the platform, sneered at him and shouted, "And here I had thought that you were a coward and had not dared to come." "Humph!" Jian Chen snorted in disdain, and directly jumped onto the platform. He stood on the platform with his arms crossed, and coldly replied, "Come at me. I'll allow you to attack me 10 times. During these 10 attacks, I will not retaliate." Hearing Jian Chen's arrogant words, the spectators below the platform began to cry out in shock, and began to talk amongst themselves in low voices. There were many elder students amid the spectators, and amongst them, quite a few did not have positive opinions about Jian Chen. They believed that during the freshman martial arts competition, the only reason why Jian Chen had defeated Ka Di Liang was because Ka Di Liang had been too careless. Ka Di Liang's eye glinted with anger. Anyone could tell that Jian Chen's words meant that he did not see Ka Di Liang as his equal. "Changyang Xiang Tian, you're even more savage than I had thought," Ka Di Liang said forcefully. Jian Chen looked indifferently at Ka Di Liang, and replied, "If you want to fight, then hurry up. I don't have the time to waste on you." "Duvi ko, humph," Ka Di Liang grunted, and sneered, "Why are you so rushed? Let's wait until everyone gathers here. I want everyone to witness the moment I defeat you." Because he had lost last time during the freshman martial arts competition, Ka Di Liang had been brooding over it for a while, especially since Jian Chen had even kicked him in the butt. To him, this was an unforgettable humiliation. In Ka Di Liang's opinion, he always felt that the only reason he had lost to Jian Chen was because he had been too careless. Thus, he wanted to take this chance to regain the face that he had previously lost, and aimed to ruthlessly humiliate Jian Chen in return. Gradually, the people surrounding the martial arts arena increased, and the population did not cease to increase either. From the distance, there were still many students heading towards the arena. This match had obviously been announced to the public by Ka Di Liang. After only a short while had passed, the martial arts arena was packed with 200 or so people. Nearly everyone was excited to watch the lively scene. Amongst these people, Ka Di Liang's older brother, Ka Di Yun, also stood there, with a few people around his age standing next to him. "Fourth brother, you can do it. Big brother is watching you." Suddenly, a familiar deep sound mixed amongst the other noises was clearly transmitted to the platform. Hearing this, Jian Chen turned around, and saw his older brother Changyang who standing beneath the platform cheering for him. Jian Chen smiled, and wordlessly nodded his head at Changyang who. At that moment, someone banged on the table and shouted, "Let's make bets, bets. Whoever wants to wager on the fight, come here. I bet on Ka Di Liang, 10 gold coins. I bet on Changyang Xiang Tian, 20 gold coins. 50 gold coins on Ka Di Liang." People gradually started to gamble on the outcome of the match between Jian Chen and Ka Di Liang. Even those who usually attended class had came along with many nobles. Money was of no issue to them, so there were many people betting from 10 gold coins to 10 purple coins. Around 80% of the gamblers were betting on Ka Di Liang, and only 20% were betting on Jian Chen. 10 purple coins on Changyang Xiang Tian. Changyang Hu slammed down the appropriate amount of coins onto the table. I'll bet on Changyang Xiang Tian as well, 10 purple coins. Behind Changyang Xiang Tian, a soft and gentle voice spoke. It was the girl from the library who sat next to Jian Chen. She was obviously from a big clan. With every word she spoke, her tone was filled with a grandeur sound that sounded natural to her. After the girl had bet 10 purple coins on Changyang Xiang Tian, everyone else started to show expressions of surprise. Changyang Hu was the older brother of Changyang Xiang Tian, so his bet was easy to understand. However, this girl did not hesitate at all when she wagered her money. Despite their shock, however, no student voiced out their questions. On the platform, Jian Chen looked at Ka Di Liang with a strange expression and said, "We can start now, right?" Ka Di Liang held an expression filled with self-confidence, and he sneered, "Changyang Xiang Tian, you personally declared that you would allow me to attack 10 times. You'd better not go back on your words. A nobleman's word is his bond." "Just give me all you've got," Jian Chen replied. TL. He uses a proverb to say this. How arrogant. Although Ka Di Liang didn't quite understand the fancy proverb Jian Chen had said, but he could roughly guess the meaning of it. Without another word, he dashed at Jian Chen to start the fight. Since Jian Chen had allowed him 10 moves, he wouldn't hold back and unleash his strongest moves. Ka Di Liang quickly rushed in front of Jian Chen, and struck out with his fist that traveled through the air so fast, a whistling sound could be heard. Faced with the fist, Jian Chen only took a single step back, and allowed the fist to stop short of him before it could make contact. How close? Just a bit more and he would have been hit. This Changyang Xiang Tian can't be too powerful. As soon as the duel started, he was almost hit. If any of those punches connect, I'm afraid that he won't get off with just some minor damages, and the victor would already be clear. This Changyang Xiang Tian's luck is quite good, to have dodged it like that. Everyone under the arena had thought that Jian Chen was merely lucky to have dodged Ka Di Liang's fist, and so only a few observers had realized the truth, causing them to start to look at Jian Chen in a new light.